Recording has begun.
All right, it's not mine. Someone's at your door. Is that you, Bobby? All right. It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm going to do roll call first. Councilman Goldsmith. Here. Councilman Trollinger. He's going to be joining us. He's not here yet. Councilwoman Bryant Ward. Here. Councilman Jenkins.
Here.
Mayor James is here. If you all would please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And the first item on our agenda is swearing in of a new police officer. So, Chief, I'm going to have you do some introductions before I come down and actually swear in our newest officer.
This is Caleb Career. He's a recent graduate of the Montgomery County Police Academy. To sign him, he spent some time in Gaithersburg, down here with us in La Plata. He will start field training on Friday night, right into the police car. So he was certified, which is great. So why don't you just introduce your family and then we'll get on the swearing in.
All right, that is right there in purple, my mom Terry, then in the blue, my dad Mike, and then my girlfriend Eric in my shirt right there.
So are you ready for this? Once we do this, there's no turning back, okay? All right. So if you would please raise your right hand. I, Kaylin Career,
I, Kaylin Career,
do swear that I will support. That's right. Take two. This is what we'll do. Repeat after me. I, Kaylin Career,
I, Kaylin Career,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do swear to support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of Maryland
to the state of Maryland
and support the Constitution
and support the Constitution
and laws thereof,
and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the duties of police officer of the town of La Plata
execute the duties of police officer of town of La Plata
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ladies. And then what we're going to do is you're going to sign. So once you sign, then now, girl, you could sign here and here. It is official now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I feel safer already. No swearing in is complete without your patrolman badges. So we ask that you wear them with pride. And remember, no matter where we are in this community, we treat everybody equally.
Thank you, sir.
appreciate all of the hard work that you guys do. This copy, we'll get to Evelyn to sign it too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just real quick, this takes a special meaning to me this year. They're going to be etching, or people will be etching the name of Corporal Christine Peters of the Greenbelt Police Department for the first time this year, who died in the line of duty in January of 2021. Chris was assigned to my shift when I worked for Greenbelt, and she worked in my division for years. So as many police funerals as I have been to in my career, one of the things I hope I never have to do is watch one of my own have it happen. We know it does. But this means more to me this year than any other time. So thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a proclamation for Public Works Week. And I'm going to have Councilman Jenkins read that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. National Public Works Week, May 15th through May 21st, 2022. Whereas public work professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of La Plata, town of La Plata. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professions who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for building, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas public work professionals stand ready and resilient to respond at a moment's notice, recover the scene of disasters, emergencies, and life-threatening situations, and restore critical infrastructure and services. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and the children of La Plata to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of La Plata, do recognize May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week, and urge all citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize their substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Signed by the Town Council of La Plata, Janine James, Mayor, James Goldsmith, Councilman, Matthew Trollinger, Councilman, Evelyn Bryant Ward, Councilwoman, and myself, David Jenkins, Councilman.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Bobby, for all that you do. And I hope that you guys have a great week. Thank you. That brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is the speed enforcement automated speed enforcement system. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The agency has studied the feasibility of a traffic photo enforcement program since 2014. Although speed photo enforcement was important to the agency at the time, the speed photo enforcement was, at that time, the red light photo enforcement program was seen as more of a priority. The agency understood that the most common cause of serious injuries in motor vehicle collisions happens when someone runs a red light. As the council knows, the agency has been working with Vero Mobility for years to enhance safety on Crane Highway with red light photo enforcement. Although 2 cameras had been approved by the State Highway Administration, the permits were later rejected in the engineering phase. According to the vendor who is appealing this decision, this has never occurred in any jurisdiction that they have representative. So we'll keep you updated on the appeal. As COVID has subsided and the agency has been able to get back to our numerous coffees with the cop forums, the number one complaint that this command staff hears is speeding. Speeding in neighborhoods, speeding on county roads, speeding on state highways. This ties into a trend reported by the National Highway Traffic Safety Institute that vehicle fatalities are on the rise nationwide, with speed being one of the primary causative factors. Peak speeding time is close to peak call volume time for our agency. Thus, radar assignments and details can be a challenge at times and are often interrupted for calls for service. Thus, the agency is requesting permission to move forward with more fact-finding about speed photo enforcement. In 2014, at the request of our agency, Chief Tom Manger of the Montgomery County Police Department allowed his photo enforcement unit to spend a week with us down here in La Plata. They did studies. And I pulled this folder today. This is what collaboration in law enforcement looks like. This is the studies that Tom Manger had done for our agency to show where we possibly need and don't need speed photo enforcement. The data at several locations did show that speed photo enforcement would enhance our ability to protect our motorists and pedestrians. It's important to remember that Maryland law governs traffic photo enforcement and provides guidance on the locations cameras can be placed, appropriate signage, a warning period for violators, days and hours of operation, and the specific prices for the fines. It is also important to remember that one of the level of reviews for speed photo enforcement is a sworn officer, unlike red light photo enforcement that allows non-sworn reviews through the entire process. I'd attached a copy of a current agreement with Conduit State and Local Solutions that is held by the Prince George's County government. Although Conduit State and Local Solutions has extended the terms of the contract to La Plata, I believe we got to do a little bit more fact finding. There are two paths that we can take. The first path is that we can do a standalone program, and that would go along with what Conduit State and Local Solutions is offering to us. The other path is that we join an alliance with a larger group like we tried to do with the red light photo enforcement. Although there may be just a tad bit more expense of being part of that alliance, there will certainly be benefits as the contracts expire and renewal times come up. Looking at the costs quoted to us by Conduit, estimating that cameras are operational, by the way the law is written, 20 days a month, and for the hours from 6 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. The cameras would need to generate approximately 5 citations per day for this program to be cost neutral. Our studies show that if we pick the right locations, we would probably be beyond cost neutral. I can send everyone a link to the report page of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services website. There you will find data from every reporting government agency that utilizes speed photo enforcement in the state of Maryland. I would encourage you to click on the 2020 report. You can select any agency. You can look at it by size, a county as large as Montgomery, or you can look at it to agencies that have 3 or 4 police officers, and it will show you how many cameras they have, the associated cost, and any revenues that are generated. That report has to be filed every year. They have studies up there, I believe, going back to 2015. So if the council has interest in the department following this recommendation and continuing fact finding, we would like to do so and come back with a permanent recommendation in 45 to 60 days.
All right, thank you. I will open the floor up for council for questions. Councilman Jenkins, I see you going for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. Obviously, Chief, I'm kind of a nutcase for speeding, as you and I have had a lot of conversations about it. So I am generally in support of this program. And my other observation would be that this is one part of a larger process. I mean, it is enforcement. It's also, and you have talked about that, it's also road design and it's also education. So I forwarded a couple of us references to 2 programs that have policies about road design. One's called Complete Streets, and there's a website, and then one's called Vision Zero. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the state of Maryland and MDOT, they have adopted that program and their policies.
Towards zero deaths.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And then with respect to road design, I would urge us to move forward on the implementation of the St. Mary's Avenue study that was done and presented to us in March. And then I know there was some presentations made to us in February on basically street crossing, painting and road and design. Again, to me, that's all part of a larger program to, I would say, a collective program to get folks to pay attention and slow down. And then I attached a recent article that there's been a study that actually has documented that when you paint highways, local roads, it actually has there is a reduction in accidents. So I think what I'm trying to say is I would support this and be looking forward to your recommendations in 45 days, but also look at this larger program as well that we've already kind of started, but I think it all works together. And then, so these numbers that were in the agreement on page 2, would they be, if we went down that path, would those numbers increase or the cost increase?
We would.
Their fees?
This RFP that was written, we would be under the umbrella of the Prince George's County Police Department,
Oh.
Prince George's County government. So when that contract would expire, we would just ride on the coattails of the Prince George's County, which are some pretty large coattails to ride on. The other, when I talked about the second path, is with the Howard County Police Department. And they have set up alliances, which Charles County belongs to both the Speed and Red Light Photo Enforcement Alliance with the Howard County Police Department. So that's something we want to take a really hard look at. Like I said, there may be a small bit more financial that it would cost in the overall program, and it wouldn't go from like 5 to 7 tickets. It might go to 5 1/3 tickets or whatever to cover a cost. But the one thing I know from my experience in Greenbelt was you want to make sure that your system is right, that it's always up and running, and you always give violators the benefit of the doubt. That way your credibility is never called into question. And that's not what we want to have happen.
Would this require some, if the council moves forward, is there a need for a budget amendment? Or is it, this would be in FY23's budget?
I'm not sure that it's contemplated within the current budget proposal, but next week we will discuss additional budget concerns.
Okay.
So it can be brought up and we can maybe earmark money or if need be amend the adopted budget after July 1, at which time the council decides they want to move in that direction.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if you will.
Thank you.
Additionally, Councilman Jenkins, we are attempting to get our internal safety committee meeting set to discuss crosswalks, St. Mary's Avenue, and also additional striping within residential neighborhoods, not just to include the center lane, but maybe the outside lane as well, to try to narrow the width of the the traffic lane, if you will, which can tend to have a calming effect on drivers. It will slow them down.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you,
Yes,
Chief,
sir.
for bringing this forward.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilwoman Bryant Ward, Ward 3. Chief, you said there were 2 paths to pursue, and I know, is there one that you lean towards more than the other?
That's a good question, and I probably lean towards the alliance a little more than the other. There's strength in numbers, and then when you go back and you renegotiate contracts, you're not just doing it on the strength. And the Prince George's County Police Department's a big group of folks to ride their coattails. But when it's more statewide, managed by Howard County, but it's Charles County and it's municipalities all throughout the state, I think there's a lot of strength there that we can play into.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things, it's a citation, so it's a legal thing. They got a ticket, basically. Do we, since we don't have a court system for the town of Plata, have any difficulty collecting that citation?
No, one of the things for people who don't pay their citations, because it's really a state citation, just like if one of the officers went out and wrote the ticket on a car stop, is you have to kind of determine how you're going to handle collections. I do know from talking to chiefs across the state, The pay rate on these vary depending on the jurisdiction. Remember, these are not against anybody's driving record. These are administrative fines against a vehicle. No matter how fast you're going, in Maryland, the fee is $40. So it's not overly pricey like you see in other jurisdictions. And I would anticipate, because it's a 12 mandatory, it has to be 12 miles an hour or more exceeding the speed limit. I would anticipate we would probably have a fairly good honoring of the citations.
But it's a volunteer awning.
Well, until we flag your tags and you can't get your tags.
Okay.
It's just like anything else. There is power. It's just how much you want to exercise. And I think during that first 6-8 months, I think we can take a good hard look at the pay rate, and then we can come back with a recommendation how we want to handle it, because that would really be kind of outside the scope of the alliance, other than the fact that they do have a company that you can sign on with that has pre-negotiated rates under this alliance umbrella to help you with your collections, or you can do it on your own.
Thank you.
So Chief, first of all, the one on Indian Head, it does work, and it was $40, and they take credit card. And it was before 8 p.m. Why the hours 6 to 8?
Well, the hours in our county would be 6 to 8, and it's on school days. So you cannot have them operational, with some caveats, like it's a construction zone or something along those lines. There have been special niches carved out in Annapolis for Prince George's and Montgomery counties that allows them to operate beyond those hours and in different areas like neighborhoods that aren't within the mile of the school zone. I know there's MML did a push to try to have that incorporated statewide, and it may come sooner or later, but especially one of the things I know on the Police Executive Association that we keep pushing is vehicle fatalities keep going up in the state. They keep going up in the state, and there's only so many police officers that can go out and write tickets. So technology should help us keep our streets safer. And that's the whole design of this thing for us. This is a safety program to us. So, you know, I was taught early in the police academy that traffic safety is public safety, and that if people respect the speed limits, they're less likely to do other crimes. That came out of a study that was done in Baltimore County. It's called DDAX, Data-Driven Approach to Policing, data to traffic stops. And it works, and it works well. So if you do concentrate on vehicle laws, your crime rate tends to trend down.
And if it was with Howard County, if that's the one that ultimately it's the one that you're going to feel comfortable with, I'm sure council will support. Will one of our officers be reading the tickets? Because you said it had to be a sworn officer that must read the ticket. Do our officers read it, or does Howard County?
No, that's a great question. Now, it has to be the jurisdiction to where it's issued. And you know, when we first get into the program, that'll be somebody's collateral duties. And if we find out, and when you look at some of these municipalities and the citations that they're sending out, sometimes they have 3 and 4 full-time people. That's all that they do. But the program pays for those salaries through the fine system. So we want this program to be cost neutral. If it's not cost neutral, then it probably tells us that we don't need the speed cameras to where they're located.
Right. Councilman Trollinger, I think you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. It's good vision seeing from all the way over here in Kings Grant. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Matthew Trollinger, Ward 2. Thank you, Chief. And I appreciate the research that you've done to try to make it as cost effective as possible and linking up with 2 different departments. I was wondering, in the studies that were done in cooperation with the Montgomery County Police Department that came down, how many traffic cameras are envisioned as far as problem places in our town or high speed areas where pedestrians may be affected?
That's a good question. We had looked at 6 cameras, and they would be 3 locations going in 2 different directions. We definitely saw that Port Tobacco Road had some extremely high speeds on a frequent basis. Radio Station Road, and then the other one was just outside of Grace Lutheran School heading out of town. So, and that was done in 2014. So we believe that we're going to do some more speed studies as part of this recommendation and draw on the experience of the Alliance or whoever we work with, the contractor, to do studies that are going to help us make educated decisions.
Okay, I know you all have, you've set up those speed, I guess they're not cameras, but those speed devices at some of those locations before. And I know, just in going to Crime Watch in the past, some of those speeds that were clocked, like for example on Port Tobacco Road, were pretty high.
Yes, sir. Sometimes we've seen it in triple digits out there and on Radio Station Road. And honestly, best of our guess is probably a motorcycle, but
Wow. And it's still just $40.
still just $40. Some locations you go take a mortgage out on your house to pay it.
Sure, we know where those are, Washington D.C. And I think that's important, Chief. When we're talking about this, it's got to be clear that if the town goes in this direction, it is for the purpose of public safety, not for generating another revenue stream for the town. Because $40 is not cost prohibitive, such that you may get $100 ticket in another jurisdiction, then it doubles within a period of time, and they've seen significant impact to their jurisdiction's budget. But for this, I think we've got to be very clear that cost neutral is the point, and traffic safety is the goal. So I appreciate that focus. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And when you look at if you go to the Maryland website that I recommended, and I'll send the link out tonight to Brent, he can forward it to anybody who wants to take a look at it. What you find as you review it is there are some locations that make a lot of revenue, but on average, the programs pay for themselves, and then maybe a little bit more for the staff that is required to operate the program. For the most part, they're not revenue makers of any substantial source.
All right, any other questions from council? So I'm going to ask council if you would like the chief to move forward on this, and which one you would like him to explore. I'm going to go with Councilman Goldsmith.
Say which one?
Yeah, well, he has two options.
Yeah. Actually, I really have no specific preference. I'd rather rely on the experience of the chief.
Yeah. And you're okay with moving forward?
Oh, yes, moving forward.
All right, Councilman Trollinger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree. I'm going to defer to the chief's expertise and preference on this, but I would like to see what the study produces.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support you moving forward with the investigation, and what you come up with is fine.
Councilman Trollinger, Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you.
It's been a long day.
I also,
Sorry, Matt.
I also support moving forward, and I would leave it to the discretion of the chief as to what option would be the appropriate. And again, I would just emphasize that it's not supposed to be a moneymaker. It's for public safety.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I am the same, whichever one you feel is the best for the town. And we look forward to seeing something in 45 days.
Thank you. And one last thing, Lieutenant Payne, Lieutenant Bagley, and I, and Ms. DeSoto sat through a training class on managing photo enforcement programs. It's required that you attend that class every other year by the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Commissions. The one thing that I think we heard many, many times, the class is taught by Rob Liberati, who's the chief in Landover Hills right now, but he's a retired major from the Prince George's County Police Department, is that you err if you buy your own equipment, because the technology goes out of date so quick and then damage can occur to the unit. So there is a third path, but we don't even, we're not going to waste our time exploring it, just listening to what Chief Liberati had to tell us when we attended the class.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, chief.
Okay, next on our agenda is FY '22 financial audit engagement. Mr. Greenville, come on down.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Greenville, Town Treasurer. Tonight, I present to you a discussion on fiscal year 2022 audit services. As you know, the town is required by state law to have a financial audit performed every fiscal year by a certified public accountant firm. The town's current auditors are Cohn Resnick. They've been the town's auditors since 2011. We did an RFP back in 2011 for a 3-year term with 2 mutual options. And then again, we extended it for another 3 years. It ended in last year. The FY21 audit was last year of the contract. So we do need to renew our contract for our auditors. Cohn Resnick and the audit team we currently have, they have extensive experience with Maryland government audits. Their audit team does audits for very reputable governments. And I'd like to think La Plata is one as well that they do. Their staff, or our staff, has been extremely satisfied with the professional and competence of the auditors. There is no law or regulation which requires La Plata to rotate audit firms. We do rotate staff with the audit firm as best we can. And the cost of last year's audit was $41,500. The proposal in front of you tonight represents a 10% increase, or $4,150 for total cost next year of $45,650. I think this is a very reasonable escalation considering the current economic conditions, as well as the last 3 years, the prices were pretty low as well. And I think this discussions with them, they would like to just go on a year-to-year basis just because of the uncertainty of the economic market right now. You know, I think like everyone, they're almost reevaluating things every few months. I think their cost structures. So that's the recommendation. Attached is a engagement letter from the managing partner, Dan Kinney, who's been our managing partner for the last 11 years. So I just recommend us renewing our audit contract with them for the next fiscal year at the price of $45,650. Once we do this, we will engage them to do our single audit next year as well with our CARES Act money. And we anticipate that coming in under $20,000. So we will not be taking it before you unless it does come that. But we intend to do that right after we secure this contract.
All right, council, any questions? Go ahead.
Mayor. Mr. Grenville, what did you say was $20,000? The next?
So single audit, since we are going to get over $750,000 in federal money, mainly our ARPA money, we are going to be required to go through a single audit, which was an additional audit. Cohn Resnick has said they can do it while they do our financial audit, and they can do it. They think at around $15,000 to $17,000.
So we're talking a 3-year contract and then a single audit.
Actually, this is going to be a 1-year contract for our financial audit, and then a 1-year contract for the single audit. Just because we're trying to only go over $750,000 in money for 2 years, so we only anticipate doing 2 single audits.
And so we're not required to rotate between auditors. Do they have the same staff? Have they had staffing challenges with the issues that most folks have had since COVID, retaining staff members? Are they?
So I believe the last time we rotated audit managers was 2018. And they've rotated some other staff. I believe as of right now, my last conversations with them, it will be the same engagement team for next year. But yeah, I do think they're partly why I think another reason they want to go to a year with us is because of staffing issues as well with them. Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you, Councilman Jenkins from Ward 4. You answered my question about ARPA, so thank you. I guess I'm just surprised that they don't require a changing of auditors every 3 years. Not to go back too far in history. I remember when I was in a different government organization, and we got federal money too, and they said you need to rotate your auditor every 3 years. So, but okay, that's a good thing. So they've been on time in terms of your scheduling of completing the audit and to your satisfaction?
Yes, they have been. I think a goal of ours is we always file an extension and submit the audit in December. Not this year, but the following year. Our intention is to get that in by the official deadline of October 31st. But no, they've always been on
All right.
time. It's, just us being a smaller government and our staffing levels, we do tend to file an extension every year and submit it. But it is our intention to get it by October 31st within the
good.
next 2
All right.
audits.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So when we hired them, it was a 3-year contract, then we extended a 3-year contract. Now they're up again. Is there, and I know that they are looking for doing this annually, which of course I would too. But is there any way that we could maybe split the middle and see if they'll sign on for a 2-year contract, locking into 45,650?
Mayor, I discussed that with the managing partner, and they're pretty adamant on just wanting to do a 1-year contract with us. And I think especially this fiscal year with some of our turnover and what we're going through, I would recommend doing it for another year with them. And hopefully sort of these economic conditions settle down, and maybe next year we can approach them for a multi-year contract. It would be a big undertaking to put this out to bid, get new auditors to come in. They have to learn our system and go through all of that. Not saying it's a bad thing, but I believe that we are very financially transparent here at the town. We put out financial statements monthly. We have, good internal controls. So I did speak with them about I wanted to do another 3 years with them, but they want to go to a year to year, and I understand where they're coming from.
Maybe you can say council would highly encourage them to do a 2-year contract. And why don't we put it out RFP? Why don't we have to, I should say?
We don't have to. Council has the ability to bypass an RFP process, and I'm recommending it for audit services, just considering our long history with the firm and sort of our circumstances for the next fiscal year.
Okay. I don't have any opposition to that, as long as you go back and say, please, the mayor is like kind of putting the pressure on me, see if
Absolutely.
you can do a 2-year.
I will.
And I'll ask each of you if you're okay with extending a contract possibly for 2 years, but maybe just 1. Councilman Goldsmith?
Yeah, I'm prepared to accept the contract proposal that they're making for 1 year. If you can do 2, fine. Sweet talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will.
Councilman Trollinger?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I support moving forward with 1 year if that's the best that we can do. But I do think, as the mayor alluded to, maybe next time around, we'll be a little bit more prepared to see what our other options are, and that may be helpful. Thanks.
Councilman Bryant Ward?
I support the 1 year.
Councilman Jenkins?
Support the 1 year. 2 years okay, but 1 year's fine to move forward.
And if the best we can do is 1 year, move forward, but if we can get 2, that would be really good.
Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you very much for a very thorough report. All right, I guess you're staying here, aren't you? You are next on this little class and comp study.
Yes.
All right.
Madam Mayor, we have tonight with us from the town contracted with PayPoint HR in February of 2020 to perform a class compensation and benefit study. We have with us virtually from PayPoint HR tonight, Karen Campbell and Dr. Rick Campbell from PayPoint HR, who did perform the study and will be presenting it tonight. So I do turn it over to Rick and Karen.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate you having us this evening. And for those of you who have not met Rick Campbell, this is Dr. Rick Campbell, who conducted primarily most of the compensation study and who will be presenting the PowerPoint for presentation this evening.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Just to start off, particularly relative to both citizens and employees that are listening in. it's a really big deal for the town to conduct a study like this. It really shows the desire and the will of the council to make sure, to the best of, honestly, everyone's ability, to make sure people are being paid fairly for what they do on a day in, day out basis. Not every organization does this. And so, it just speaks, well of you for having a study like this, and that it was done in a fashion such that it was, an independent and unbiased study, so that both parties can believe that the information that is being presented tonight is simply the facts, and that they can believe it and trust in the results. Go to the next slide there. All right. So this is just a simple outline, and we're going to cover this evening the approach the project undertook. And we'll start off at the beginning, then followed up. Karen will give a presentation about some of the results from the benefit portion of the study. Talk a little bit about the comparators and the methodology used for selecting the comparators and who responded. Talk about the existing salary scale that's currently in use. Then go on and talk a little bit more about kind of the internal equity piece of things, or the classification portion of the study. Talk about what the market results were, our recommendations, and then wrap things up in a conclusion. If you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me as we're going along. This is intended to be as informative as possible. So for you to get the understanding that you want, again, please chime in when you feel it is necessary. So the project approach, it's a pretty much a methodology that we use consistently across the country. Basically break up things into two phases: one, a classification phase, and the other side of it, a compensation phase. The classification looks at knowledge, skills, and abilities of employees, and that is kind of one metric that you can use to create a hierarchy. For example, if a supervisor supervises 20 employees versus one employee, that'll come out in the kind of creating a hierarchy with the one that's supervising 20 employees at a higher level than someone who has one. And it's the same kind of, you can look at other factors, whether it's education required for a position, the impact a position has on different aspects of the organization. Lots of different factors that can be used to create a complete understanding or create hierarchy of jobs there at La Plata. On a second yardstick that we look at is what external communities are paying for similar positions. Now, why do we have these two different yardsticks? It's because sometimes, and more often, what we find is that there are going to be some positions that our client values internally higher than perhaps external organizations do, independent of what that looks like. So that needs to be taken into consideration, when you're doing an analysis. The example that I typically give is we have one client in Missouri that has over 100 parks in their city. So how they value it is the park department is much, much higher than pretty much any organization that we've ever encountered otherwise. So that has to be taken into consideration when determining what fair pay is looking at, the complete holistic picture. So that is kind of, again, that's kind of the compensate or the classification side of things there. That's in the blue, and on the orange side of things is more of, again, going out to external markets, comparative organizations, and asking HR departments directly what they pay for similar work. Now, we ask HR departments because, well, that is actual dollars being paid versus something that you could Google or look on Indeed or something like that, which can be, believe it or not, radically different. So we look at, again, both pieces of information. We statistically, analyze things and make sure, see how well they're correlated at the end of the day. And that is how our our results are based on. So as part of the external survey that we send out, or did send out, we asked a number of benefits questions. So that's where we're going to, start, I guess, more of the number side of things. And then I'll turn it over to Karen to go through that in a little more detail.
Sure. So thanks, Rick.
If you can go to the benefit slide.
One more. There we go. All right. So key takeaways from the benefit portion of the compensation study is that comparative to the other respondent organizations, La Plata has a slightly greater number of employees who are full-time, which indicates to us that you have a higher likelihood of benefits being more expensive in your organization than in the market comparators. But also, too, it is fairly well known, I think, across the population of staff there that benefits are pretty strong with La Plata. And what we found is, as compared to the local market, La Plata roughly has about a 30% cost of total benefits as a percent of total compensation. So if you took $100, for example, of budget money that's part of total compensation, that would mean 30% of it, or $30, was spent on benefits for employees. Relatively speaking, the market came out at 23%, which is nationally very low. I'd expect the national numbers to come in at between probably 30 to 35% for non-union employees, and then for union employees to be more like 40 to 45%. So while La Plata's number at 30% is higher than the local market, it is not nationally considered high. And it's on the low end of non-union nationally, just to try to keep it in perspective. But key areas of possible improvement for La Plata would be in considering possible increase in premium contribution towards single level vision coverage. Interestingly, the town has chosen to pay for family level vision, and whereas the, I guess, market respondents chose not to. So it's, a little bit of a consolation there, but it could possibly be that the town contributes more towards vision insurance premiums for the single level employee. And then it's also reported in the respondents that one of the respondents in particular offers their employee a health reimbursement arrangement in addition to a health savings account. And there's some nuances to HRAs that are different than HSAs and might be attractive for the town to help employees offset the cost of retirement health premiums. Interestingly, and there's more information available regarding HRAs, but it is something that the town owns, so that an employee who retires as an employee of the town can take advantage of that. But if an employee leaves before their retirement, those funds stay with the town. So it's a bit unique in that regard. And the other takeaway for possible areas of improvement would be what we noticed is the number of vacation leave days for new hires was relatively low compared to the market. The town does offer personal days, which helps to make up for that. But still, if you're trying to attract and retain quality employees, especially those at mid-level management and above, who might be considering leaving one organization to come to work for the town of La Plata, you might find some difficulty once they realize that they get only 6 vacation days to start. So that number is low. I believe the median would be around 10 days of vacation to start. So that is concluding the benefits review and analysis. I'll let Rick get back to the compensation portion.
Okay, thank you. So if you could advance the slides and one more, please. So comparators. The methodology that we do for selecting comparators, and this is in conjunction with the project team, so it wasn't done in a vacuum, but what PayPoint does is typically draws, basically a big circle around the town of La Plata in this case, and then look at different socioeconomic factors of all the communities that are similar in service offerings and size and features like that, and do again a statistical analysis to see are they similar or are they not. Just as simple as that. So some of the factors we look at, things like cost of living, labor force participation rate, median household income, housing price, unemployment rate, to make sure to the best of our ability we have an apples to apples comparison. Now, if you just look at population alone, for instance, Charles County would be obviously substantially larger, but they are also a natural comparator, so that they would be an organization that you would want to include as part of the study. And as an example, something where though you were in relative proximity, that is just night and day difference would be either Fairfax County or Washington D.C. So rather than just doing it in an ad hoc manner on picking places that you just thought that were different, we look at real numbers to make sure that the organizations that we went out to the HR departments and asked for salary information, that they were in fact within a couple standard deviations, that they were in fact similar to La Plata. So the number of we sent out the survey to a substantial number of respondents. We got 16, which actually ended up being a very good number. Typically, we're seeing surveys of different types, and 5 to 10% is more typical. So the number of respondents we got was very well, and that was due to no short degree based on Karen's efforts and the project team efforts to contact their sources to ask them to participate. So got very good results, and so it makes the results not only have a higher degree of confidence in the results today. So if you can skip 2 slides, please. So the first things after we've set aside, and determine what the fair group of comparators are, the next step that in the process that we go through is to see where you're at. Hard to know where to go if you don't have a background on where you're at. So some of the things about the current salary scale, the spread of being 60% is very good. That's actually typically what we recommend throughout the country, just simply because it allows for enough growth for an employee, in that same job title. They're not capped out too soon, and you don't have to create a lot of artificial structure to keep employees, retain employees because you're maxed out in salaries. And then the ladders, the distance between grades, it's pretty good. But you'll find out as part of the recommendations is a part of the things we did is not only update the dollar amounts to be more market reflective, but also to, in the end, increase the ladders a little bit to be more, have a greater incentive for people to seek promotion. Now, some of the things that on the kind of more on the negative side that we found is that approximately 3 out of 4 employees are currently being paid below the midpoint of their salary range. And that's extremely high. That can be the result of turnover. That can be also the result of employees, not being progressed through the salary ranges. Lots of different reasons why, but this can cause other problems, whether it's morale or turnover. So that's something to take into consideration. That is also in part why that second bullet there, where it says 6.3% of employees are at the upper end of the salary range. that can also be a contributing factor. If you have a number of employees that are relatively stuck or at the bottom end of a salary range, then there's going to be a pretty substantial disparity between most employees and your top wage earners. So that is something in general, it's recommended that town to keep an eye on kind of the salary distribution of employees to make sure that the organization doesn't get too top heavy and that there is a massive disparity in pay as a result. So if you can forward on 2 slides, please. And we'll talk about the compensable factor score. So we asked the different department heads to help us get a complete understanding of the different job titles that they supervise. We also used the existing job descriptions, that was also a big part of it. And then we had the project team, serve as a checks and balance to make sure that everything was done in kind of a uniform manner, and everything was, again, it wasn't just a singular department head, advocating one way or another. Everything was, fairly done across the organization. But what we do in this, and kind of, again, as I mentioned kind of in the earlier, is we look, one yardstick we look at is knowledge, skills, and abilities, and creating a hierarchy based on that. And we ask a number of different questions, and it's looked at, across the organization. So it is, while certain departments, for instance, in most police departments, you have a natural progression based on ranks. Not all departments do you have such a clear-cut, division. And then between different departments, you don't necessarily have a clear understanding of, well, how is, a police corporal, how is that, relative to a planner based on the needs and the requirements of the town. So that's kind of one of the values of looking at the internal equity in that fashion. And then one of the unique things that PayPoint does is then we turn around and then we correlate knowledge, skills, and ability. Again, that one independent yardstick. Then we look at the market, the external market, to make sure that they are in alignment. That, for job titles that are, for one reason or another, exceptional, that they are taken into consideration based on the priorities of La Plata. One thing that the chief brought to our attention, just to make sure that everything's clarified, that there's one instance where it says police officer candidate here in the report, that needs to be changed to just say police officer. So that's just a typo correction that we'll be cleaning up and making the adjustments there. Otherwise, the numbers are all correct. It's just the difference between the titles. But what we found that as a result of that statistical process is that the CFS score, looking at, again, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, correlate, extremely well with the external market. The correlation, the R-squared coefficient of determination, is 95%, extremely high. Now, why this is valuable? It gives you another piece of information to have higher degree of confidence that the market results are accurate, along with, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So any pay recommendations, you have 2 independent sources of information to say, okay, this is true and this is believable. And that's kind of the value and the power of it. It's also going to be valuable, going forward, in that now that you have this correlation, answering the same question for new positions, as a result of, for instance, perhaps the organizational study that, that the town feels that they need to add certain positions. This has the mechanism already in place that can accurately place, new job titles, or job titles that are taking on additional long-term responsibilities, to fairly evaluate them and to adjust their compensation based on not just opinion, but on kind of results of this classification and compensation study. So if you can skip ahead 2 slides, please. So this is a very thin slide. What we typically start out with, and most of our clients want this, so it's not atypical, is to strategically place, the compensation of employees at the middle of the market. So it translates to median, if you will, is another term, or 50th percentile is yet another term. And what that really boils down to is saying is that half of the respondents pay less than this amount, and half pay more. That's all that really means. Now, the very last slide is in kind of blowing my the last huzzah there at the very end is giving you additional options that where the town may want to position themselves strategically relative to compensation. We start off with 50th simply because that is common, but then again it's up to leadership to decide where you want to be strategically relative to compensation. Also, in light of how fast and quickly inflation is affecting compensation across the country, and how sustained that is going forward in a still very tight labor market. Having said that, the group of job titles that were found to be substantially below market, and that is more than 10% below, include the assistant town manager and the wastewater treatment plant operator in training 2. Those were only 2. The number of job titles that, and again, one thing I want to emphasize is that this is job titles. This is not individuals. This has nothing to do with individual performance. Another way of looking at this is if you hired a brand new person, independent of their, any kind of performance, this is where the job title would be, relative to fair placement. That's something to take into consideration, particularly with, smaller organizations where many titles have, one singular person, and there may be a perceived bias on the performance. That's not a part of this study. We have already assumed in advance everyone is excellent at what they do. This is looking at the position itself and not the individual. The second group that is highlighted there are positions that are just below market. So that's between 5 and 10%, below. The job titles there are across the organizations, from planning to public works, to and everywhere in between. There again, no biases as part of this process, no favored department or not, just results. But it's a relatively small group of job titles overall. So what this is fundamentally saying is that, La Plata is paying right at the middle of the market currently. There's a few exceptions that where adjustments can be made, but this is what's identified. And again, that's just making the assumption strategically that is where you want to position compensation for the town. If you skip ahead 2 slides to recommendations, please. So the first thing is, and as I mentioned, is to tweak the salary scale a little bit, not dramatically so. There's a couple of grades in the existing system that there are pretty good gaps. So this kind of closes that up and cleans it up a little bit. The spread is the same at 60%. The gap between grades is a little bit higher at 7.5% as compared to 6%. And it's starting at what's become almost the de facto minimum wage of $15 an hour, and not radically different from where you're at now. But again, it's very close to where you need it, and all the job titles, as part of our recommendation, are placed on this one scale. If you can go to the next slide, please. So the fiscal impact of, again, just assuming that you strategically want to be at the 50th percentile of the market, breaks out in this fashion. Now, the caveat is there's many different approaches that you can use to bring positions into market rates that you want, and strategies based on budget. But considering that you are very close to being at market now, or be at the 50% of the market, it is quite frankly, probably one of the very lowest dollar amounts that we've ever presented. Normally, in studies like this, the amount of adjustment that needs to be made for an organization the size of La Plata would be probably on the order of $1 million. So this is substantially lower, and it actually speaks, very well of the town in terms of positioning themselves so that compensation has been, relatively fair relative to the median of the market. Now, having said that, the adjustments that are made there to bring those two positions to the minimum of their pay grade at the cost of $30,145. The two job titles that were highlighted that are substantially below market, to bring them to the 50th percentile would be $20,717. And then the 15 positions that are below market at a cost of $48,516. Now, we were also asked, if you can go to the next slide, by the project team to look at, what other possibilities there are. And this, is a strategic choice of the town on how they want to position themselves. I guess it was a couple of days ago, we pulled the information relative to what the CPI is for basically our area. The CPI for the year over year for the area is at 7.3%. So that's basically giving an indication of, for us, the inflation, that's how much costs have gone up. So as an added piece of information. So to make all the changes that's highlighted today, to be at the middle of the market, that 50th percentile, total cost, that does not include benefits, but just the salary portion of things, looking at $72,377, and it would impact 19 employees. You can see there's a number of different options there on being different percentiles of the market. So if you're at a higher percentile of the market, for instance, you're a market leader. And that may be something, again, that you may want to make, based on a strategic choice to either get ahead of inflation or to, be more progressive in terms of compensation. But we ran the analysis and how things would shake out. And you can see there the different degrees of percentiles. So to clarify, the 70th percentile, for instance, what that in other language, what that means is if you had 10 organizations, 7 would pay less than that amount and 3 would pay more than an amount. That is what a 70th percentile effectively means. But where the town wants to be at strategically, again, we would need, I guess, ask for feedback whether or not you want to be at a different place other than the 50th percentile. And with that concludes our presentation. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. And for that, since Karen and I have been on 2 projects with the town now, and are very appreciative of the opportunity and have very much enjoyed working with Michelle and Brent and Kevin. He didn't have to sweet talk us or anything like that, but we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. You said you're open for questions. Are you ready? Because they're coming at you.
I'm ready.
I'm opening the floor. I see Councilwoman Brian Ward is ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Campbell and Mrs. Campbell. I just have one question. Can you define the compensable factor score?
Sure. It looks at a number of different factors. So one of those factors is supervision. Do you supervise employees or do you not? How many employees do you supervise? Do you, have the ability to hire and fire, or are you just more of, mentoring? So that's a series of 5 questions on that facet. Financial aspect of things. Do you manage, a budget, or do you have discretionary spending authority? Questions on that. The physical, aspect of your job. Do you have to lift a lot of weight as part of it? And for me, I lift a ream of paper and that's about it. So that is that portion. And we look at a number of different factors that the Bureau of Labor Standards has, identified as, legitimate factors, if you will, to distinguish one job title from another. The education is part of that, process. Minimum years of experience required for a job. The impact a job has on, on the town. Those are also, additional, questions. It is a total of 46 effectively multiple choice questions as part of the survey, but it also includes things like education and, as I mentioned, minimum years of experience.
Thank you.
So just to piggyback on that, so when we see a 12.2 for compliance coordinator all the way up to a 63.8, I understand there are 46 questions that you asked in our survey. What does the 12.2 mean versus the 63.8?
Excellent question. So it's a curve. So that's one thing to consider. So a job title that it's at the 12.2 does not mean that it is 5 times lesser than the Director of Public Works. That's not what it means. It is a relative scale. So you can make the statement there between, for instance, the Director of Public Works, Director of Legislative Services, and it's 2 points difference, but they're very similar in score because they're kind of grouped together. But if you looked at 2-point difference between, the compliance coordinator and the planning technician, and then you might say the crew leader, they may also kind of be similar. And it's, if you were to draw it out, it would form kind of a nice arc. And so that allows you to have an understanding of how things are ranked up. It's not linear, because if it was, then you'd have to make you'd make the argument that one position is 5 times more important than another. But this is kind of a relative gauge to have an understanding of how jobs line up, again, based on just knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from council? Go ahead, Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. Thank you for the presentation and the work. I know this has been a long time coming, so thank you. I'm not a real expert on HR stuff, but I'm curious, you have a recommendation for a salary scale, and just what would it cost us to implement that? I guess is the first question. And then I guess in my previous work, and we always had a step system. Is that, well, let me ask it directly. Should we have a system where there are steps, grades and steps versus a min, a mid, and a max? And if so, is that expensive to implement something like that?
That is a preference, honestly. You can implement the system either way. My just personal preference is to have a min-max system, simply because, there may be occasions, this year is a perfect example, where with high inflation, you may want to move salaries more than other years. And it doesn't have to follow, exactly on a step. So that is one aspect of things. Also, when you have a step system, there is oftentimes the expectation that you are automatically going to get a step every year. And good and fine. That's, informs employees how they are going to move across, on a yearly basis. Both systems, you can work out the math, on the one-time thing, be equivalent in terms of cost, or very similar. They're not radically different. The difference really ends up being is, in future years on how you want to implement things. The min-max system has more flexibility. The other one, again, it has a more, it's more like a defined contribution, if you will. In such cases where you have a step system, the number of steps, is really up to you on how many you want to do. So for instance, most education systems, most school districts, they typically have a 20 or 30 step, system. So our employees get typically a step a year. So the spread can be anywhere from, 30% to 60% wide total. So employees get 1 to 2%, and that's really about it. Typically, in most environments, with relative inflation, that might work. Doesn't really work well on, in years where you have, dramatic inflation, and that's kind of the downside. But it really boils down to, what works and, makes sense for the town. And both systems can work, equally well. The cost for the recommendation is there on the, I guess, second to last slide. That covers the different percentiles. The baseline that the study was done at made an assumption, and just because that's the assumption that was made in the analysis does not mean that is where, the town ends up choosing to be. We started off with the 50th, meaning half the organizations, again, pay less, half pay more. You want to be at a different, percentile, some of the kind of the estimates there are provided on terms of, salary adjustments and approximately the number of employees, that would impact. So it gives you kind of an estimate again on how much it would cost, whether it was a step system or a min to max system.
Thank you. And then I guess a question for Mr. Greenville. Regardless of what the council chooses, I'm assuming it would be implemented in the next year's budget cost of this.
Yes.
Okay.
You guys could choose to implement it whenever you want, but I believe the intention would be to do it in next year's budget.
And then and I know this is not part of the study per se, but
You said it was your last question.
I have a comment now. Just a comment that probably has not to do with their presentation, and thank you. But again, to me, it points out, and we've talked about this, a need for an HR function within the town.
And that is one
And
thing
that
that
is
I didn't
a comment.
see in here. Yeah,
Right.
that is a comment. You're
Right.
okay on that one. I didn't see in here that it said in this presentation that we need a HR person. I think that is because of so many laws that an HR person has to know. And it protects us, and it the benefit with all the benefits. There's so many benefits out there. I'm curious, is there a reason why you didn't put that in the presentation to recommend a new position such as HR?
Sure. So with the previous study where we did the staffing study, that recommended that you have an HR manager or HR generalist level position added in. So that study incorporated the addition of that. It is our anticipation. There is, and Kevin can probably speak to it a little bit more in depth, but there is a list of positions that we anticipate to also add to the report with regards to where those should be positioned in the internal hierarchy and what potential compensation for those positions would look like. And in there, I believe there are at least 1 or 2 positions that are HR positions in there.
Right, but one of the things that we develop, the tools that are developed in this process for all of our clients, we transfer it directly over to our clients. So all the analysis tools that are developed at the end of the study is going to be given to the project team to use. So answering the same kind of questionnaire that was done as part of this study can be done for any position, any new position, or any position that substantially changes in nature, reevaluated, independent of an external consultant or anything else, if that is again your choice, and to evaluate based on these results. All right, where do they fall in? Looking at the knowledge, skills, and abilities, because we've correlated that with pay. So you get the knowledge, skills, and abilities. You figure out, all right, this is then therefore what pay looks like. So the correspondence is 1-to-1, and it's a very simple process that that the project team is familiar with and can easily be transferred to the town.
And
So-
it is an algorithm that's unique to La Plata.
So Karen, bottom line is that these two, the two reports that you did, the independent reports you have done, they're really going to kind of merge. So the bottom line that we have here that we're looking at, if we do the 50th percentile for 19 employees, $72,377, that just gets our wonderful employees right now to that level. We're not talking about any other positions that we need. That's going to be an additional cost. So it would be interesting to see what the merged documents look like and the bottom line on that. And my question is, can any of this be funded through ARPA money?
Are you
Yeah.
asking me or Kevin?
She was asking me, unless you want to take it, Karen.
I can take a guess at it.
After we did discuss this with our ARPA consultant, and under the revenue loss that we're taking standard deduction, employee pay and certain employee pay can be covered under ARPA funds. But just a word of caution of our strategy with ARPA funds was to sort of try to minimize operating costs, because this is one-time sort of unique money. I'm not saying we can't use some, but just in how we sort of developed our ARPA budget was we sort of skewed away from adding operating expenditures to the budget.
And I understand that. As I've said before, this is found money. If we can get to that level, then we're going to have to do our budget anyway. If we can implement it through ARPA money and then start for our next budget, realizing, okay, now we have to fund these new positions, where, in my opinion, and I'm not an accountant, but in my opinion, we are a little bit ahead of the game on that. So now we start with a new total versus trying to fund it through different methods. If we get them up there, then we have to find that money.
Mayor James, we did, the budget that we did propose had, I believe, 15 new positions, which, the majority of them were from the organizational study that Rick and Karen did recommend those positions. So I think at this point it is taking, their recommended salaries and finding that number for them. So.
But does it take into account these numbers here? It's the 15 new positions, but does it?
Not yet. No, it doesn't.
Okay, so
That was, we budgeted that based off our previous pay scale.
Okay. And the CPI, I know that we have been talking about that in another organization I belong to, and it stated here 7.1. The other organization was looking to give to make it the COLA at 7.1, and it fluctuates. You could go today and it could be 10.1, whereas military and government, they're getting 5.9, and many of the municipal employees, just as I talked to the other mayors, are capping it at 3%. So that is something to look at as well. On that. Not that I would ever want any of our employees to not be able to have a cost of living raise, but it will fluctuate if you're using the CPI, as you well know. So, all right. Any questions? Do you have any questions, Jim? All right, Matt, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you both for the thorough report. I think it seems to tell us that overall, I mean, with a caveat that we need to make some modifications, it seems like we're a pretty well-managed town, is what I'm taking from the data that you've presented to us tonight. And I appreciate that as an encouraging thing in times of inflation and staff, not just in the municipal area, but in the private sector being very high turnover. But I was curious as to whether the town has access to the raw data collected such that as we look at some of the positions that are recommended in your prior study, that we have some comparative analysis so that we don't have to have another new study done, right? But we're using the data already collected for an example for the HR position, right?
Correct.
As an example.
It's better than that. As I mentioned, part of the deliverables is kind of the tools that kind of correlate knowledge, skills, and abilities with pay. Because it's also important not only to find out what the market is paying for positions, but how that ranks up based on the priorities and the values that the town places on different positions. My example was the parks, in that city of Missouri. You have the same case, every organization's like that. So what we've done is with our two independent yardsticks, we looked at knowledge, skills, and ability and pay and correlated the two. So for all those, the additional positions that you want to include, if you know the knowledge, skills, and abilities, you automatically know what the appropriate pay level is for the town. That can be different than what the external market may say, either high or low. So that is something that is, there's a number of positions that we will be analyzing and providing the project team. But it'll also be a tool that you will have going forward and can use, kind of at your discretion.
So for example, on that scale that Mayor Janine, sorry, said, why is there a difference between 63 and the 12.2? Answering the questions from the questionnaire will yield a 4 between that number, and that will correlate to the new pay scale. So you'll know where the pay grade for that position should fall. And because we know that it's 95% correlation, it should be fairly, you should be confident in what the pay grade for that position would yield.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I guess last question has to do with the compensation part that's not just salary. I know there was not as much. You did give us kind of a bird's eye view as to some of the benefits that our town employees have a little bit better off, and some that we don't, right? So for the 6 days when they first start versus vision insurance, I kind of thought we might get a little bit more deeper than that on some of our retirement or pension information, so to speak. I don't know how much deeper you received from the other respondents or what we have access to as far as that goes. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Unfortunately, with regard to pension, respondents were vague or non-responsive on those questions. So, given the responses that we had, we did the best analysis that we could. I do understand with Kevin, you're working with a vendor or consultant with regards to potential pension or additional benefits for employees and what those costs might be. So that might yield some of the answers that you're looking for.
Okay, were there some out of the 16 respondents that did give us some data that we can use?
Yes, there is. So it's rough, but generally speaking, They use the same administrator, ICMA, which is now Mission Square, I believe, to administer their plans. 8% was the median with regards to contributions for employer contributions towards pension. Some did require participation or require employees' contributions up to 6%, in some cases 7%, but that was the high end. And pretty much that was the summation of the data that we got.
Is it in the benefits?
It is in the benefits report that the project team did receive.
Okay. I think we'll just have to dig deeper on that and see, but I appreciate you letting us know about that. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, we know that for the police department, it is a concern, but unfortunately we didn't get deeper data on it. We tried.
And I think that is something that council is very interested in for not only the police department, but all the departments, to all the employees, to see if there is an enhanced retirement, and even maybe, I mean, I'm fortunate enough having retired military, so we have health benefits. I'm not retired military. My husband is sort of, kind of, but so health benefits too. Beyond, them working here. I think that is very important to our employees. And I would love to kind of get more information on that to see what the cost would be to do that. Again, it's another benefit. We do offer great benefit packages when you work with us. But if you spend 48 years with us, like one employee did, and he does not get a retirement from us, nor does he get health benefits. So that I know Kevin's probably sweating right now going, she's spending more money, but it's important to us. And that's something that I think when the number comes out, it is something that we give to the employees. And maybe it's a give and take, saying that your salary may not be up at the 75 percentile or whatever but you will get this. So it's all negotiating, that's what it's about. All right, question, go ahead.
So, Mr. Greenville, you have looked at that already, correct? You've done some research on that.
Councilwoman Brant Ward, we did receive back the LEOPS actuarial study, which I believe has been shared with council. And it hasn't? Okay. And last week, we did receive the from NFP, who is our insurance broker. They free of charge, which was very nice of them. They did a lot of modeling of actuarial work for potential plans for offering health insurance and retirement for our employees at various levels, various different vesting periods, and we'll be happy to share that. We got that very recently. We did get the initial report back, and there was some back and forth on that, so we do have that to share. And just to touch on what Karen said, the report that was shared with you does go into, more detail on the benefit side of things. So we did do our best and really worked and pushed other governments to respond to. So we did do our best on that.
So what I don't want to happen is, we've had conversations with the chief and we've had conversations with Director Stahl. What I don't want to happen is for us to be here this year talking about the same thing they've talked about with previous council and got no results. So I want them to understand that we're not just saying that we want to see it happen, that we are looking into this. I want them to know that we're actually looking into this. It's important that we're transparent and honest so that they don't say, well, the previous council said the same thing. The council before that said the same thing. That's disheartening, and I would like to take that conversation off the table and make sure we come up with a result. Thank you.
And I would like to put it on one of the upcoming work sessions where we could have the LEOPS and the benefits discussion so that we can really hash it out publicly and look at what there is to offer instead of giving us the information to read. We're all capable of reading it, but we have questions. And that's very important, whether it's for LEOPS or whatever else that is out there. But as I said, it's very important to the employees to have a retirement and health after they retire, healthcare after they retire. So that's what I would really like to do it. So if we can get it sooner than later, we'll give you a deadline. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I'm saying within the next 60 days, so that we can have that. I was actually going to say next week, but I'll give you a break. All right, any other questions? Well, that is a lot of information. Thank you both so much for this incredible report, both reports, and we will, I know this council, they will continue to look through it and they will have many other questions. So I hope that you're ready to answer them, and we look forward to seeing what we can do to help our employees have good pay here, good benefits, all that good stuff, because we want to keep them here. So thank you very much.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you, Kevin. Whew. All right. I almost think we need an intermission. All right, going on to the next one. We are with, oh, it's still you, isn't it? The Capital Improvement Plan Schedule of Fees.
Yes. Mayor James, before you tonight is the proposed FY23 fee schedule. Highlighted in yellow are new fees that are added to the fee schedule. No fees were deleted. Just to go over the new fees very briefly, we've had some rather large public information requests recently. We, reached out to several other governments to sort of see how they handle those because, when you reach a certain cost threshold, it does cost the FOIA, the person or the body that's FOIAing the information a cost. And what seems to be standard practice, and what we thought was a good sort of compromise on it, is for a public information request that the cost is calculated at the time of request, and there is a 50% deposit required of that calculated cost before we move forward with the FOIA work. The other one is a traffic study impact reviews. That was to be decided. I had not received the information back. We reached out to Jamie Kendrick, who works with the town regularly, and his firm is willing and able to do the traffic impact studies. I passed around and put up there too for the public to have, and I can pass out some more, just the fee schedule that he proposed. I did not have time to implement that into the document, but those are the fees he is proposing. Staff has reviewed them and finds his proposal to be fair and adequate, and we will be passing that cost on to the applicant or developer.
So the public information request, is that what Lieutenant Payne was talking about last year? The amount of documents that they have to produce?
So that was an adjustment we made to the fee schedule last year, and that is for things such as accident reports, incident reports, records request of photos, video recordings, audio recordings, and the records request research fee. So those are different. That's requests coming to the police department. A public information request comes, can be the town-wide and can be, anything that is FOIA-able under the Maryland Freedom of Information Act.
Okay.
All right. Any other
And
questions?
and the only thing I'm still waiting on is there's a few outstanding items on the calculation of the major facility fee. I will have that to you, get that number to you guys by next Tuesday using the consultant's framework that he gave us. So that number will be presented at the next work session. And just historically, the town has not done a historical average for consumer price index costs. So we are using the All Urban Consumers 12-year CPI increase as of February 2022. That is 7.9%. And for any item that is construction related, we're using the Municipal and County Association Construction Index, which was approximately 10%. And that was only a few items that were construction related within the CPI.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. You answered one of my questions about who would do the traffic review, so thank you. I thought there was a discussion earlier in April about providing some kind of a comparison of existing fees and the increase, or what the average cost would be for an increase, some kind of infographic or some kind of explanation, particularly on the water and sewer fee. I thought there was discussion about
Yeah,
that.
I will provide that to council this week.
Okay.
That is one of my, I'm just going to give you a average bill from FY22 compared to the FY23 proposed rates. And I will get that to you guys.
Thank you. I know you have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm gonna go a little off topic here and ask the chief. Chief, you get the accident reports and the incident reports. For me, it's a very easy number. I like round numbers. I like dollars. I don't like cents so much. And I see it's at 1075 and then 55 cents per page, the initial 10 pages. Have you had, and most of the insurance people pay, and most of the insurance companies pay for that. Is that a fair assessment on that, the 1075? Is that difficult for, I would think it's Sheila maybe that handles that when you're talking change?
So deal with especially with motor vehicle collisions, that's probably where we get our most requests from. We contract with, help me here, Bobby, people about car crash stocks. So we download into their system every night, and then they collect and send us the check. In exchange, they're allowed to have the information from our crash reports for whatever they use in the insurance industry. The other thing, it comes in from insurance companies itself. So what we try to do, or what we did last time, was we try to keep it at a round number because they have it in their computer. So if we can do that and then set it to where we keep it the same for 2 or 3 years, because I think that Kevin, in that what we did last time, I'm pretty sure at least for collision reports, we did it that way.
Yeah, and Chief, if you want us to reduce this back down to what it was last year, I mean, no problem.
No, I don't, it's just notifications we have to make. So if we're going to move it up just to a round number, it certainly makes it much easier for the insurance companies.
And that's what I was wondering. And plus people that aren't going through insurance, they're going to fight this on their own. You're talking 75 cents. And this one, is that one of the ones, or all of the fees, they go up annually because of COLA?
Yes, that is, every one of our fees is.
That's still, I don't agree with that on something that is, a piece of paper is not going to go out that much. And same with you've got the person that is working it is getting a pay raise. So why should the fees be going up on things like that? I still have a problem with that, but that's probably a me thing. And again, I'm not a numbers person, but I know that's not impacted by cost of living, in my opinion. But I am only one voice. Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Yeah, I do understand the need to increase it because I do medical records and it's a nightmare. It's time consuming. It takes staff away from their regular jobs. And so paying a nominal fee for that is just not fair to the staff. It's an additional job on top of their current job. So I support you with the fee that we have.
But the staff doesn't actually see, I mean, they don't get the benefit of a report being raised for that.
So if I may I?
Oh, absolutely.
So when it comes to vehicle collisions, unless there's a criminal offense, somebody's driving DUI, the only thing we're really doing is making documentation for insurance companies. When they redesigned the Maryland automated reporting system for collisions, it wasn't designed by police officers. It was designed by the insurance industry to catch as much data as they could. So good, bad, or indifferent, when we go out to a vehicle collision where somebody's hurt or vehicles have to be towed, we are really doing the work for insurance companies more than we are anybody else. So, and I know when the citizen comes in and they buy the report, it's a little different. But for the insurance companies, and it's Carfax.com that we submit to, and then we get the paycheck from. But Yeah, it's one of the things in policing I never understood because police officers are criminal officers, but a lot of our time is dedicated to civil things like vehicle collisions.
Right. Thank you. And yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question, and the page you just hand out, traffic impact studies, such, is that something that the developers do as well? And we're doing something similar to that and charging them for it, or what is this right here?
If Miss Harrington is on the call, I'm going to direct that question to her because she can answer it much better than I can.
Yes, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so for when we have a development project in for development review, the applicant does submit a traffic impact study. At this point in time, we do not have any staff with the ability to review traffic impact studies adequately. So that's why we would have, it's very similar to utilizing Soil Conservation District and Macrone to do our stormwater management or our water and sewer utility reviews. The traffic impact study would be someone working on behalf of the town to review the traffic impact study provided by the applicant for completeness, consistency, that it's accurate, those types of things.
So it's a pass-through cost.
Yes.
Not that we don't that, really the fact that we're growing so rapidly that the staff doesn't have the time. I have done the traffic impact reviews up until now. The bottom line is I also have all of the licensing qualifications to do all the sewer and water reviews. But the bottom line is I just flat out don't have the time because we're managing so many projects right now with regard to growth. So I would personally want to disagree in that, you know, this isn't about the fact that we don't have qualified staff to do things across the board, and we have done for the past, 15 to on back. It's the sheer fact that we don't have the time today to sit down and to do the accurate reviews that we need to do, and that's why, I talk to Macrone every day on sewer and water reviews all the time. But I just flat out can't be reviewing all the multiple applications that we have and all of that. So I want to point out the fact that, we are doing this now not because of, inexperienced staff or a lack of that. It's just the lack of sheer time because of the volume of projects that we're doing.
Thank you. Councilman Stewart?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to just agree with you on the importance of keeping the cost of requesting police reports, traffic collision incident reports nominal and not have arbitrary increases. I've seen it as a practicing attorney, and my primary purpose in life is to represent folks that are injured in collisions or hurt at work. And in the medical industry, it is getting extremely cost prohibitive to get a patient's own medical records. And the idea is it's just getting passed along to somebody else. And I kind of hear that a little bit here. We're talking about $10.75 versus 65, 80, 200. I mean, I got a bill the other day from an office for $600 for somebody because they said, oh, well, the attorneys are just going to pay it. But that's not true. Just like our friends at Verizon and Comcast do, they pass along the cost to the consumer and the customer. And every person that's involved in a collision, and if they are hurt, they're going to pay that cost. And we don't want to have a tax just because they were in a collision that's going to pay for something unrelated or different for our benefit as a town or as a government. Not only that, but these are very important. Of course, police are first to respond to the scene most often than not, and they have the ability to document witnesses that were there on the scene. And even though it is a civil matter, oftentimes it has significant consequences for our residents. So I just want to just be the opposing side there, or not maybe opposing, but just a different perspective on this discussion, and just recognize that when we offer these things for a town as a service, in the general course of what we do, that we do it with excellence and know that it's not just the insurance companies. In fact, most of the time they use these things inadequately and not for what was intended by the police that come to respond. So that was a diatribe, but thanks for listening.
Thank you. Any other questions on, yeah, go ahead.
Madam
Councilman
Mayor,
Jenkins.
again,
I would be disappointed if you didn't say something.
Again, a question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. We're getting back to the traffic review. I think that's a good thing because it helps us understand traffic issues, obviously within the town, not only on state roads, but town roads as well. And it all gets back to the safety issue and speeding. Director Harrington, is it fair to say that this is part of your work on working on a adequate public facilities ordinance in terms of a traffic review?
Yes, so the adequate public facilities ordinance is in draft form, and it is with the town attorney to kind of do an overall review. Jamie Kendrick with Mead and Hunt did do a preliminary review of the draft and provided his own comments. So yes, that is part of the overall intention, and I didn't mean to offend anyone. I meant the planning department didn't have the staff or capacity to review those traffic impacts.
Thick skin, he's okay.
Thank you for the, thank you.
We love you. We do. All right, any other questions? All right, so Mr. Manuel, what is the council need to do anything, or we will adopt it when we do the.
Yes, Mayor. So next week with the agenda, I will have the changes we discussed. I'll get with Chief Schinner and Lieutenant Payne and just discuss those records reports and have the last bit of information on the major facility fees. And I will also incorporate the fee schedule we received from Jamie this week into it. And that will, we're going to have a public hearing on it at the business meeting this month. And then we will adopt it at the first work session in June, if it is the will of council.
Okay, that everyone think that's okay? All right, thank you so much. Appreciate the hard work.
Thank you.
Oh, well, that. All right, Southwest Quadrant Water and Sewer Infrastructure Extension.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, this is more of a FYI item. It relates to the 2022 USDA loan obligation the town was able to secure at the end of March in the amount of $12,650,000. In doing so, with this obligation, pretty much null and voided our need for the original 2017 USDA loan obligation in the amount of $11,449,000. So in the short of it, USDA would like their money back. So we need to, I will be de-obligating those funds, and I just wanted council to be aware of it, that with the good news that we were able to close before the end of March, we were able to lock in the 1.75% interest rate on that loan. So things are moving to plan.
Fantastic. And what was the rate in 2017?
In 2017, I believe we originally locked in for 2.65, but then the town requested the lowest rate possible. So at the time of closing, so, in theory, we would have been at the 1.75 if we had gone under the original obligation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. That is good news. And yes, please get us out of that obligation. But so we're not double dipping there. All right. Well, it looks like Hawthorne Yards, the annexation is on. Are you guys ready? Come on down. All right. We're going to go into, I know you guys are going to be, we've got questions there, and then we're going to go into a public hearing on this one too.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thanks for sticking around. Okay, so I'm going to go first with you, Mr. Manuel, since it's legislation and we've got these guys here. It doesn't say public hearing on this one yet. This one's just.
No, the public hearing is on Hawthorne Yards. Or I'm sorry, the Villages of Rosewick.
Villages.
We have a few annexations, obviously.
All right.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, agenda item 4.1, Hawthorne Yards annexation for introduction. A resolution concerning Hawthorne Yards annexation for the purpose of authorizing the annexation of 53.2274 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata by amending the corporate limits of the town, establishing certain terms, conditions, and circumstances applicable to such land and to the owners thereof, providing for zoning of such land upon annexation and all matters relating to the annexation of such 53.2274 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata.
Okay, so we have, I'm going to open this up to council, but I'm going to put you guys in the hot seat too. Do you have any questions on this resolution? Because it's just an introduction, because we have the applicants here.
So again, Madam Mayor, Councilor Jenkins, word for it. This is just for introduction only.
Yes,
We're not approving anything.
we're not, but it
And
would be
then,
great to ask questions. if
and
we
then
have.
we will have a public hearing scheduled.
Yes. And Mr. Scott, I know that a question went out that kind of put a flurry into everybody's day, and I apologize. But we were talking about, what? I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Well,
Councilwoman.
there you go. One of the things that we were talking about is I know that Hawthorne Yards had proffered some items to come into to be annexed in. What were those?
So good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Steve Scott, for the record. Also Stacy Lagana with me here. We actually weren't aware that we were answering questions. We're happy to on Hawthorne Yards. We were here for
You're here and you stayed all.
Rosewick Village.
Yeah.
But in the Hawthorne Yards discussions and proposed annexation agreement, there was a substantial upgrade to the Quailwood pump station, and that would provide capacity for Hawthorne Yards with some additional excess capacity to serve some other units. And that's a discussion that we've had with Director Stahl, and also Macron has looked at that for us. So they, excuse me, they were also going to contribute a sum of money to the town's Maryland Main Street program. My recollection, it was $10,000. But they're going to install sidewalks, of course, along the frontage of Quailwood Parkway and Hawthorne Road along their project, along the Hawthorne Yards project. And
Must be a Amber Alert. Westminster.
so I thought the
So much from you.
plug was being pulled on my project.
That was the signal. That was
Yeah.
the signal. So there were several things.
There were on-site, of course, recreation, including pickleball courts. If you recall, Mr.
There was-
Guadagnoli is very much into pickleball himself. And
Yes, he would. Yes,
believes
and I
that's
love
very
that.
important. Also a gateway entrance sign to the town of La Plata there at the, I guess that's the west side of the project on Hawthorne Road. And I believe that was it. Stacy, was there anything I had missed there?
I don't think so. There was a lot of walking trails and things interior to the community, but I think you covered it all.
Wonderful. And thank you. You really did well on the fly there. So that's
So you realize now I can bill Mark as well tonight.
that was just an FYI there. So
If Mark's saying I'm only kidding.
so if the consensus, do we do a consensus for the move forward on this one? If it's just an introduction that we will.
Yeah, I don't think in the past we've taken any action.
Okay.
I think it's
so-
an introduction which starts the process.
Okay, we have been introduced. All right, and then the second one is 4.2, the Hawthorne Yards annexation plan for introduction.
Yes, Madam Mayor, a resolution concerning Hawthorne Yards annexation plan for the purpose of approving an annexation plan for the annexation of 53.2274 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata, and all matters relating to a plan for annexation of such 53.2274 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata.
Okay. All right, any comments? Okay, thank you. All right.
Not yet.
Okay, now we're moving on to the public hearing of the villages of, well, we are just getting a lot of information here, right? All right, so I would like to call to order the public hearing, which is a hybrid for the Villages of Rosewick annexation. Craig, I'm going to ask you to review the procedures, please.
Town of La Plata hybrid public hearings will be conducted in the following manner. At the discretion of the mayor, speakers' comments may be limited to 3 minutes. If you are joining the public hearing virtually and wish to speak for the record, you must announce your name when joining the hybrid meeting virtually and state that you intend to speak during the hearing. Keep your phone audio muted until called to speak. The town clerk will add your name to the speakers list. Written documents for the record should have been emailed to the town clerk, who will have then presented to the mayor prior to the opening of the hearing. At the conclusion of this hybrid public hearing, if the record is held open and you have questions or would like to submit written documents to the record, please contact the town clerk prior to the close of the record by phone 301-960-3507, by fax 301-934-3965, or email legislative@townoflaplata.org.
Thank you very much. The review of the public notices. Has the notice of the public hearing been properly advertised? Craig?
It has. I enter into public record the clerk's affidavit that stated we had newspaper articles or ads, public notices in the newspaper for 4 weeks, 15 days prior to this hearing, as well as certified mail to the adjacent and contiguous properties, as well as signs posted on the adjoining properties.
Thank you. And Planning Commission recommendations. Janine, are you on? You're muted.
I'm very sorry. My cat had an issue with my computer and it went flying. Yes. For the record, Janine Harrington, Director of Planning. This did go before the Planning Commission at their March 1st Planning Commission meeting. And the Planning Commission did find a consistency of the comprehensive plan and did recommend the NCX zoning as requested.
Thank you very much. And the applicants are here. Would you like to say anything?
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Again, for the record, Steve Scott on behalf of the applicant. With us also Stacy Lagana and Larry Abel, and then our traffic engineer, Mike Linhart, is on virtually and prepared to address the traffic impact study. Also on virtually are Mr. and Mrs. Chadwick. They couldn't be here in person tonight, but they're on the virtual meeting. So this is a project, of course, that has been proposed for some time. The annexation idea has been around somewhere around 10 years. When the annexation idea first came to be, the town zoning ordinance didn't really lend itself to a good mixed use zone or a really usable mixed use zone or an annexation like this, do a mix of commercial and residential uses. Eventually, of course, the zoning ordinance was amended. Part of that amendment included two very, very good and usable kind of collaborative design zoning categories, including the TDX and the NCX. And this one we propose to be NCX. This is approximately 20 acres, including the roadway areas. On the north side of town, I guess that would be the northeast quadrant. It's at the southeast corner of Rosewick Road and Washington Avenue. It is currently zoned within the county, a zone for industrial use. So under the current zoning, we could not put residences or homes on this particular piece of property. It is what we consider a gateway property into the town limits. It's at a major intersection. The town's comprehensive land use plan certainly calls for this property to be annexed at some point in terms of the growth element of the town. And we'll further address the compatibility with the comprehensive land use plan. One housekeeping issue we have is the applicant's C&K Properties. Of course, that's Mr. and Mrs. Chadwick's entity. It owns most of the property. Then we also had Lila Hicks. In between the time of the filing of the annexation petition and now, C&K Properties has closed on and acquired the Lila Hicks parcel. So it is just one applicant at this point, which is the Chadwick entity, C&K Properties. So we have a PowerPoint. We know we've had a couple of work sessions with the town council on this, and we don't want to belabor this too much, but for the members of the public that may not have seen that, we're going to jump into this PowerPoint. So I'm going to turn it over to Stacy Lagana.
Good evening. For the record, Stacy Lagana with Lorenzi Dodds & Cannell. Just want to run through the PowerPoint with you. Okay, get that up.
Put policy on here.
No, that's not part of my PowerPoint.
Okay, I wasn't judging. Yeah.
I apologize. That wasn't loaded into the agenda. We're working on getting that for you.
Thank you.
Great.
So while that's loading, let's also address that same question, Madam Mayor, that you asked on this particular parcel. I think I had sent an email earlier today saying, hey, we hadn't considered proffers and we need to look at the financial aspects of this project. And I think I was having a senior moment. Maybe it's it's actually happening more and more these days. We had proffered a $10,000 contribution to the Maryland Main Street, the town's Maryland Main Street program. We'd also proffered to do complete the sidewalk from Washington Square to the north up to this property and connecting to the hiker biker path that's on Rosewick Road. And of course, beyond that, the developer would, of course, pay for the impacts on water and sewer, complete the utilities to the site, and also include in the development a number of on-site amenities, as we've mentioned. There is also a proposed annexation agreement. The town council will recall that we discussed that proposed annexation agreement back in August of 2001. And of course, that's something that we'll need to further clarify and finalize if this annexation does go forward.
2001?
Oh, 21, sorry.
See, I'm paying attention to you. I am. It's late. It's tired.
Yeah. It's actually past my bedtime. Yes.
I can probably run through the first couple slides without it actually being up. I think they're fairly easy.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so the first slide I had was just reviewing some of the annexation requirements, a general overview of kind of the process. So we're required to submit a petition for annexation in compliance with the annotated Code of Maryland. And as part of that, we need to provide a property description and a description of the proposed uses. We need to show that we are contiguous to the town and not creating what's called an enclave. I'm sure all of you have heard that. We need to identify a town zoning district classification, which Steve mentioned. We've chosen the NCX zone. We need to provide a fiscal analysis, an analysis of the surrounding area, existing and proposed public facilities plan for improvements. We need to show consistency with the comprehensive plan, and we also need to submit a draft annexation plan, which formally sets out the terms and conditions of the annexation. And we also do public hearings, which brings us here today. So as Steve alluded to, I know I don't have a map up yet, but the property is located at the intersection of Rosewick Road and Washington Avenue. In many ways, this property can be considered the northern gateway to the town. So the property is surrounded to the north by Rosewick Road, and across Rosewick Road is actually some industrial zoned property. To the east, we're bordered by the CSX Railroad, There's a small industrial zone parcel up along Rosewick Road that's next to us, and as well as phase 2 of Heritage Green. To the south is, of course, self-storage plus and some various commercial uses. And to the west is Washington Avenue and several other commercial properties. As Steve mentioned, the total annexation area consists of 20.7255 acres. And this includes the larger C&K Properties parcel, which is 14.13 acres. This particular property is primarily cleared land. It was a former lumber mill, and there are really no distinguishing environmental characteristics to note for that particular property. The other property we referred to was what we call the Hicks parcel. That's 0.65 acres and does contain a single-family dwelling still. And again, also we're annexing the frontage of Rosewick Road and Washington Avenue. Just again, the existing zoning in Charles County right now is general industrial, and surrounding the property to the north across Rosewick Road is some high intensity industrial property within Charles County. So are we close to getting
When
that?
did you send that?
It was day before yesterday, I believe. Yesterday.
So, on Monday or Friday?
Monday. It was Monday.
Yesterday.
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 Sorry.
I know.
It all.
Me too, me too.
It was yesterday. Yes, yesterday morning.
That's all right, keep going.
Sorry about that. Okay. So within the town of La Plata, of course, we're requesting the NCX zoning category. As shown on the current town zoning map, adjoining us to the east is the traditional neighborhood mixed use zone, which is also Heritage Green. So that's to our east. To our south is light industrial zoned property, and to the west is commercial highway zoned property. So we're surrounded by traditional neighborhood mixed use, light industrial and commercial highway zone properties in the town. As part of our annexation request, we are to, show how we are consistent with NCX zone. So for this property, the NCX zone has several criteria, and I just want to run through those criteria for you to show you our consistency. The NCX is intended for areas that are either currently developed or proposed for development. In this case, this property is obviously proposed for development. Another criteria is it may be used only for land that is in targeted municipal growth areas under the growth element of the comprehensive plan and is either underutilized, transitional, or vacant. So this property is in the targeted municipal growth area in the comp plan, and it is also underutilized, transitional, and primarily vacant. So we also meet that criteria. The third one is it's intended for land that is convenient to both commercial zones and residential zones to provide essential services to existing neighborhoods. As exhibited on the zoning maps, this property is convenient to and bordered by numerous zones, including commercial, residential, and industrially zoned property. So we will be in close proximity to those elements. The NCX allows for a range of densities and mix of compatible uses. This project will have a residential component and a small commercial component to support the proposed development in surrounding neighborhood. So we feel we also meet that particular criteria. And the last one is development in an NCX zone should include commercial and residential uses or provide a transition to residential areas. In this case, the project really accomplishes both of these. It's transitional and it has commercial and residential uses. So we really, when going through that criteria, it was, this zone is obviously a good fit for this particular property. Again, a large part of the annexation is showing comprehensive plan consistency. The comp plan designates potential areas to be considered for the town's growth. Within the comp plan, there is a future land use map. And on that map, this particular property is slated for growth. It's in a municipal growth area. It's designated as being within the northwest growth quadrant, and the suggested town land use is mixed use. This project is consistent with that mixed use designation with its residential and commercial components. So in that area, we are consistent with a comprehensive plan. I had also outlined several elements that are within our comprehensive plan just to further demonstrate our consistency. The first is the land use element, and an action item in this land use element is that new development will reflect the principles of walkability, sustainability, and environmental protection. This project will have sidewalks, it'll be pedestrian friendly, it will be a sustainable project, we'll be implementing green building design and techniques, and we will be meeting all the environmental codes and ordinances. A second criteria in the comp plan is within the municipal growth element, and that is that we require that new growth areas be connected to water and sewer service. Obviously, this project would be connected to water and sewer services should it be annexed. It calls for support annexations when there is a clear path and identified funding for water and sewer connections. In this case, the developer will be responsible for the funding to bring the utilities to the project. It also says to closely coordinate annexations with the county government. The county is aware of this annexation and have been in contact with staff as well as the applicant. I believe it was last week. Was it last week?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we went before the
Last
county
Tuesday, we went in front of the county commissioners. They did not make a recommendation. I think the consensus with the county commissioners is they wanted to see what the town wanted. I think Mayor James, you might have been on that meeting virtually. And so they have not made any recommendations or comments on this annexation proposal as far as I know at this point.
Another element in the comprehensive plan is the environmental element. It says to protect sensitive areas and require a high standard of environmental protection. So one of the nice things about this particular site is that there really are no sensitive areas. But we will be subject to codes and ordinances such as the Forest Conservation Ordinance to protect sensitive areas since we are developing this particular property. The water resources element requests that we preserve and enhance high quality and sensitive water resources impacted by growth and development. We will be required to implement ESD to the MEP. So our stormwater management facilities, and we'll have enhanced erosion and sediment control devices. So, by doing that, we will be protecting surrounding water resources. I'm actually on the Town of Elapatia Comprehensive Plans consistency slide, if you can go to that one. We finally got it up.
Number 7.
The one before that.
Yeah, one right before.
Yep. There you go. Okay, so I'm on the transportation element bullet there. So in the transportation element, it calls for walkable communities, better managing the supply of existing and limit new off-street parking. So of course, this community will be a walkable community. We'll be providing shared parking between the various uses on site. The community development element calls for encouraging a range of housing density, type, cost, and support aging in place initiatives. So this project, again, will provide quality housing stock and fulfill the need for higher density multifamily housing in the community. It also supports the aging in place initiative. Whether this project is ultimately a senior project or not, it will provide a variety in the currently available housing stock in the community. The last one there is the recreation and parks element. And one of the things that are called for within that element is to create strategically located community parks in neighborhoods and provide open space. This project will be providing active and passive open space opportunities. It will meet all the current codes and ordinances, and should the property be annexed, each one of these elements will be further reviewed by staff and the Planning Commission for consistency. So. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry to go through some of the conceptual renderings and elevations.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. My name's Larry Abel, and I'm an architect and planner right here in the town of La Plata. I just thought I would pick up on just a couple of things on the NCX zoning that maybe apply a little bit more to architecture. And one is to provide a high quality development compatible with the area, which obviously that's something that we have worked very, very hard to do. And also to be compatible vertically as well as horizontal. The vertical component is a very, very essential component in this plan, because when it was originally, whether it's seniors or others, if you can make it so people don't have to walk miles to be able to get to the core, Now, obviously, you've accomplished a lot. So it's quicker to go up 2 floors or 3 floors with an elevator than it is to walk 500 or 600 feet. So that's a very important component.
Excuse me, Larry. Craig, could we have the next slide, please? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I did want to point out on the environmental component, it used to be a sawmill. So it's a big transition in the planning world. That is big to go from a sawmill to a use for commercial and residential uses. That, and in fact, and in GBS, you pick up a lot of points for that because you have actually made a big environmental turn in terms of what you're doing. And then I think the other thing is to maximize public transportation. When we first proposed this project, and I'm sure as we get into it in the detailed planning stages, but particularly in the green building area, the whole idea of carpooling, public transportation, bicycle rides, all of these kinds of things are things that if you're trying to be environmental, that you would try to incorporate in your project. In fact, occasionally an electric car charging station might be appropriate as well. So those are the kinds of things that we would be looking at: efficient land use. And the one component that is in that ordinance is flexible development patterns. And that's both looking to the outside of the project as well as to the inside of the project. In the town ordinance, you have, particularly in the building ordinance, as you design, there's a lot of criteria on the ground floor. And what that anticipates is maybe you start out in some areas on the ground floor with residential, but you have the ability to go back and flex that as the uses in the town takes place. So this project will have all of those kinds of things. So and looking at this particular elevation, this is along Rosewick Road, and this includes 4 of the buildings. And what we tried to do was to tie them together in a way so that they're harmonious. There's a rhythm to them, to the roofs, to the sides, to the building stepping back and forth. You can't see it in here, but the glass and the fenestration, all of those things are taking place, to make this an interesting project. And the thing that we tried to do was, one, we tried to pick up on the town, the Victorian aspect of the town. This is sort of a Victorian project. It's neoclassical in that it's a little bit more contemporary than just being plain Victorian, but it still kind of picks up on the Victorian elements, and we wanted that to be the case. We wanted it to be a project that establishes a high level of character, prestige, and something that draws people to the town, particularly at this particular entrance. So I kind of look at where we are. It's sort of the tale of two zones. We have an industrial zone, which is the current industrial zoning. You can look all over the county. You can drive 925, all kinds of other locations in White Plains, and you can see the industrial zone. And if you think of that versus what we're proposing, I can't think of any reason the town wouldn't want to do everything as quickly as they can to get control of this property because it is going to be such a strong statement. If it was industrial, it would be the only location that I can think of along Rosewick Road that there would be industrial. And the fact of the matter is that because of the way that we pulled together the project, and made it look internal, we've solved the problems of a lot of horrible land uses that could be around it that I'm sure will change over time. So next slide, I'll try to be quick with this. The next slide is the slide in the heart of the project. And basically, if you look at the project, this is the core. This is where the residential elements come together, where the elevators are, where the drop-offs are, where there will be all kinds of exciting activities like restaurants, shops, outdoor activities. Basically, the core of the project, the character of a village center will be right here, and what we're trying to hope to make take place and pull it together. Next slide. Okay, this slide is really a work study slide. And probably most of you won't really appreciate it unless you're an architect. This slide basically shows how the entire project comes together. It is viewable from 3D. Every way that you look at this project, you will have a different vision of how it comes together. So when we put together the project, we look at it when you drive down Rosewick Road, when you drive down Washington Avenue. We try to look at it. So what do you see from this? Not just that first elevation that I showed you, which is really nice. It's easy to do a nice first elevation, but what happens when you look at it from other standpoints? And this project is one that has to look good from all the way around. There's no backside, there's no backyard. Every place that you look at this, there is a front yard to this particular project. Next slide. So this whole NCX zoning is not only is it buildings and vertical elements, but it is also land planning. And so basically, as you look at this project, you will see a couple of things. One is we already had entrances that were established when the Rosewick was designed. We honored those entrances simply because the transportation engineers were trying to make it that way. We oriented this project towards the center. If you look at it, if you make a beautiful center and you can focus the landscaping there and you have all the building elements, then the distractions of maybe the industrial land to the north kind of go away. Your tendency is not to look there, but to look at this project. And so we have a nice pattern of circulation that ties in very well with Rosewick Road. Next slide. I could spend a lot of time talking about these, but I don't think you really want me to. You'll be glad that I didn't. But this shows a circulation pattern. The dark blue lines show the major road networks, Rosewick Road, and also Washington Avenue. There's a lighter blue that shows a bicycle path. That bicycle path happens to go all the way through St. Charles. It's a beautiful path. Hopefully someday we will see that bicycle path right on down to downtown La Plata. So we are providing the elements for that to take place. You can't really look at the slide at this particular level, but what you see is pedestrian pathways so that there are people can hike and bike all the way through the project. Internally, there are circulation patterns between the buildings. Between the buildings, it's like a little park-like setting, maybe some water flowing through there, fountains and things of that nature. We call the front area, no matter what it ends up being, is Honeydew Park. That's where the missus sends you down if you want to have drinks and cocktails and so forth. And to the back of it, we have Doghouse Park. So,
I love that.
But they're interconnected by trails. And I guess if somebody has a dog, they go to Doghouse Park. So we tried to have a little bit of fun when we were pulling this together. But anyway, it's a beautiful circulation pattern. It's compact. It works very, very easy. And what you see is on the lower part of the residential side, when you loop around, you follow the loop. The residentials, you come in from that side to both of those projects. And on the upper side, which is towards Rosewick Road, the center that I described earlier, which was the heart of the project, is where visitors would come, where people from the town and so forth would come. So we tried to separate those uses and make those take place in a very logical fashion. The last part is we did the fiscal impact statement and
Larry, before we get to fiscal impact, let's just talk again, just really briefly about design. The idea, Madam Mayor and Council, is that these concepts would be revised, I guess I'll use the word refined, using the NCX zone. I mentioned earlier the NCX is a collaborative effort between the applicant and the Planning Commission. And we're actually very impressed with NCX and TDX and the way they work. The goal of the NCX zone is to arrive at a master site development plan. And that master site development plan, of course, is used then to implement the project. We envision this land use and architecture. We envision perhaps the building closest to the intersection being primarily, if not all, commercial, but also integrating some of the commercial into the multifamily buildings. And I think that when we say this is conceptual, I think that what we mean is we intend to refine this concept as we go through the NCX master site development process. We know from experience in the town as indicated that we don't want to lock in design elements and design requirements in annexation agreements any longer. The town and the applicants have found that to be very, very constraining. And I think that the NCX zone lends itself perfectly to establishing a concept, annexing a piece of property, and then undertaking a collaborative design effort. I think that's exactly what it was designed for. I'm sorry, Larry. Go ahead.
no, that's, and you were right on target, because that basically is what I was alluding to when I said that you needed to have the flexibility to change. It's one of the few zones that allows that to take place. And I can tell you, while we started out as looking at this primarily as a senior project, there's many other things that may take place that will enhance the town even more by the time this is improved. We don't know how long that's going to take, but I mean, I can tell you, even in the senior year, from the time that I started out, seniors were happy with having a little library, having a little place to play cards, doing this, that, or the other. And now it's exploded. You have to have outdoor barbecue pits. You have to have bars. You have to have all kinds of games that you play on the outside. And even to the extent maybe Doghouse Park becomes a garden area. I don't know. Maybe Daddy has to go out there and plant a garden. But I mean, it's the kinds of things that today, the opportunities and what's taking place are very, very exciting. And, both for the town and the developer, I think the beautiful part of it is we sort of enter into a partnership, and of course, the developer has to conceive of something that works. This project alone has been through, I believe, 3 different market studies to get to this point. You can't keep doing market studies. You eventually have to get to the point of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. But we can't do that until we get the zoning in place and have something real to work with. So once we get over that hurdle, I think this could be perhaps the most exciting project that the town has ever dealt with, because the zoning allows you to do exactly that. So even in the things that I'm talking about, just understand it's kind of based on a concept. That concept may or may not work because there's still variables. Sage Point, we don't know what's going to happen with Sage Point. Was a big component of what the project was to start with. So I think we all have to recognize that the one thing that the town wants and the developer wants is whatever we do to be economically feasible. You want it to work. You want it to generate funds. You want there to be jobs. You want there to be recreational activities that everybody enjoys. And the only way that you can get those is to have the most viable types of activities and businesses that you can have. And so that's the NCX zone. And, when we present this, it's to show you the kind of effort that went into this to make this the kind of project that it is. And that same effort would go into whatever we do to go forward. So I think that's kind of where we're coming from. I don't know that I can talk about the fiscal impact just a little bit. The fact of the matter is, with the inflation that we have experienced just recently and the construction cost, I guess the alarm went off on my fiscal impact statement too. The dollars are going up, just as I thought. But
Craig, that's the next slide, please.
The fact of the matter is that this project is the value of it is third higher than it was the day when this was done. And it's only happened really in about the last 6 months. So, but to give you an idea, when we did this, we had about 300,000 square foot of space. You can say whatever you want to, residential and assisted living and apartments and commercial offices, medical offices. Steve alluded to the medical building. You could have a first floor, that would maybe be like a drugstore, and then 3 stories of medical on top of that. Or maybe there would be other things like, prosthetics or something like that. A lot of different opportunities. But all of this happens within, if we stay with the project, in that 300,000 square feet. The construction cost at that time, that when we put this together, was 46 million. I'm thinking it's probably 60 or 70 million now. It's just, it's just amazing what the costs are, and I don't see it coming down anytime soon. We had, in this project, there were over 500 jobs between construction and the activities that were taking place. Just think of that, 500 jobs. And then this particular model had about $24 million worth of annual income and generated taxes to the tune of $5.7 million. And of course, the town doesn't get a big chunk of that. But what it does for the county and the state of Maryland is unbelievable. The other thing that typically the studies, the fiscal impact statements that have been done in the town are direct cost. And we don't talk about the 7 times of money transferring to somebody else. If you take that same amount of dollars that I'm talking about here and you translate that amount of income to somebody else, how many other businesses do you get? And how much does that impact on that couple of percent that the town gets for real estate taxes? I mean, it's just, the multiplier is tremendous, and a project like this could have, and I think, tremendous impact on the town, more than just the direct town itself, just the vision of what you see coming into the town. To see a project of this magnitude, think of what that does for you, whether it's Heritage Green, whether it's a shopping center, or other improvements that take place. Good quality development generates other good quality development and also higher values for property. So we think this is a winner for the town. I don't like to use necessarily terms like that because we're supposed to deal with the facts, but these are the facts, and they're good facts for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Next slide, please. And Mike Lenhart, I'm hoping you're still with us. Can you give us a brief summary of the traffic impact analysis?
Yes. Good evening. For the record, my name is Michael Lenhart with Lenhart Traffic Consulting. We did conduct a traffic study for this annexation request. The traffic study was conducted pre-pandemic, and so it is a bit dated, but it showed that the site does not have a major impact, and all the study intersections would operate at acceptable levels of service. Now, the approval of the annexation, as you know, does not approve the uses on the site. And so when this moves forward, if it does get annexed, there will be requirements for new traffic studies. And it was discussed earlier in tonight's hearing, the traffic study process that the town is implementing. And so we will be getting new traffic counts, updating the study, and updating background developments. And this study did look at Rosewick Road out to 301, including Washington Avenue and the Rosewick Crossing Shopping Center. All of those intersections were included in the Heritage Green traffic study, was recently reviewed and approved. And with improvements at Route 301, all of those intersections are shown to operate at acceptable levels of service. So we believe that this could be accommodated as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And Stacy, if you could briefly address sewer and water utilities.
Sure. We also had Macron take a look at our sewer and how we could best service the site. Basically, Macron did the analysis and it was determined that this site would require a sewage pumping station, which the developer will be providing. We also looked at 3 options to connect the on-site sewer pumping station to the town's gravity collection system. And after meeting and coordinating with Mr. Stahl, it was actually determined that there's a 4th option that we decided was the preferred and most viable option. And that is connect to the sewer trunk line that's going to run through the Heritage Green project up to Rosewick Road. So we have ongoing coordination, not only with the town, but the developers of Heritage Green. We've met with them and been in contact with them. And we are moving in that direction to bring sewer to the site. With regards to water service, there's an existing 12-inch water line along Washington Avenue that this project can tap into to service the site. A couple considerations to note, all the proposed utilities and any applicable impact and connection fees will be paid by the developer. And should the property be annexed, a detailed utility study or detailed utility design will be performed with future engineering site plans and reviewed by MDE and the town of La Plata.
Thank you, Stacy. And I'll just briefly wrap it up. We're actually excited to bring this project to you. It's been some time in the works and in the thinking, and actually I forgot how interesting and exciting this project was until we went through this presentation this evening. I think it can be a real model for the town of La Plata. It's a gateway property, and I think it can provide an entrance to the town that we can all be proud of. Does it have impacts on the town? Of course it does. We think that, of course, the developer can mitigate those impacts, and certainly we've shown that the traffic impacts are manageable. Water and sewer utilities, those impacts are manageable. Of course, this will be subject to the major facilities fees and all the fees and costs that the town imposes on new development and new construction. In terms of the decision as to whether this is all age restricted or a portion age restricted, we think we're leaning in that direction. When the project was first envisioned, it was to be all age restricted. As Larry mentioned, there was a detailed market analysis done at that time. It showed that the market demand was there. That has waned somewhat in the meantime. It's been almost 10 years, I think, Larry, since that first market study. And so what we're asking the town is to give us some flexibility as to whether and how we can establish the components of this project between age restricted and non-age restricted when the time comes to get closer to finishing the design under the NCX zone. We think that's really the only practical way to proceed with the project at this time. We do know that we face a potential 5-year wait under the state law because of the change in the zone from a non-residential zone to a more intense residential and commercial zone. And we'll have to deal with the county on that. But that highlights sort of the possibility that this may be still a longer-term project than one might otherwise imagine. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and comments and public comment as well, if there is any.
Don't got a line here. It's only for right now, board or council. So council, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a few, if I could. Jim Golds from Ward 1. There's several, and you made alluded to at the very end there as far as you have a potential 5-year wait. And that we don't control that as such. I'll compliment you. I think it's a great architectural design. I'm very positive about it as well. Do you know how many though, and that can change. I know how many residential units we plan on eventually having. So how many EDUs are we going to be identified with for?
There's 230 units on a project right now.
How many?
230.
230? Yeah.
The project as it stands right now.
Will we have any impact about school seats? Have we discussed that at all, the Board of Education?
It is possible if, obviously, if some of the units are not age restricted. We indicated to the county commissioners last week in our meeting with them that we would address the impact on public schools once we finished a decision on the final design and land use of this project. And obviously, this project would have to comply with the town's APFO, which of course is now being in the process of being revised by the director and her staff.
Okay. Now, just speaking from experience, since I have in Washington Square, not a lot of seniors like to have young children around. That's why they like to be in a senior community. So that might impact your final decisions as such.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've got a lot of homes and stuff in there. And it's beautiful design, landscape and whatnot. How are you impacted by the parking requirements that will have to be there as well?
I'm going to let Larry address that one.
The way that we worked the project, the project focuses from the out end.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep the vehicles on the outside of the project, and then you kind of work your way to the interior of the project. So the idea is to try to create this, walkable, highly landscaped area with the vehicles pulled to the outside. You'll have drop-off points that are close, but that's kind of how that we're controlling that part of it.
But the vehicle requirements by our current code say it's one per house, or one per unit.
We will meet the requirements, whatever the requirements are of the town for vehicles, we will meet those.
Okay. And thank you very much. I think it's a good project.
And I just want to mention one thing on EDUs because I think it's an important thing. The green, if you want to have green building activities, the town has to figure out a way of flexing a little bit on that because, for instance, we can reduce the water and sewer requirements by 50%. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that, but it costs more for the developer to do that. And so to me, as we go forward in this process, EDUs reduce the water and sewer requirements. They also increase the development costs, but it's also a nice discussion to have if you're trying as a town to make a statement about that. Same as I was mentioning about, carpooling and things of this nature, or buses picking up seniors or others and bringing them to downtown. I mean, I think some real opportunities to do some forward thinking on this project.
Thank you. Councilman Trollinger?
Yes, first, I want to thank you for the presentation. I wanted to go back to, I think, slide 11, if we can. And this first question is for Mr. Abel. I love some of the language that you use. You're a very good marketer. I'm sure you're a very good architect as well, but your skills shine through on multiple levels. You talked about flipping the type of land use and what an attractive kind of from the vantage point of our gateway to the town would be compared to what it is now. But I noticed that out of the 20 plus acres, there's a lot of pavement, and this is kind of the flip side of Councilman Goldsmith's question. Out of that 20 plus acres, what is envisioned as far as the green space area that we've heard talked about? And I'm just kind of looking through the slides and the documents presented, and I couldn't kind of put my finger on an estimate as to what would be the green space portion.
Well, I don't know at this point that, we had a discussion when this came along. The town requirements when we were doing the senior project are almost 100% higher than most other senior projects that we're doing around the country. So because the seniors tend not to be having cars and parking as much. So, and particularly on the assisted living, we had far more parking than what we thought that was necessary. On the other hand, we couldn't submit the project to you without including all of that parking and all of that vehicular space. So hopefully, as the project goes forward, there'll be opportunities to talk about that. In some areas, what we have done is we have left where we didn't think we need the parking, we left the space there, made it green. And then if it was needed later, came back and did paving. This kind of project allows a lot of discussion along those lines. And I don't disagree with you, but I also would have to say, I think we had more parking than what was required, but we were complying generally with the town requirements.
Understood. And I appreciate that response and feedback for us as we move forward with a lot of interested folks developing in our town. Second question I had, and this may be better suited for Mr. Scott, when this presentation was made, or at least a portion of it was made to the county, did they ask you about the water situation? Did they have any concerns or questions about that?
Councilman, that issue did not come up last Tuesday. We're of course always mindful of it and hopeful that it will resolve itself for all of our developer sakes. But it did not come up last Tuesday, no.
And they had the opportunity to raise that, I'm sure, at the close of your presentation.
Yes, they did. Yeah, there was a lot of give and take, but that issue did not arise.
Okay. And then my last question is for Mr. Lenhard. He's still with us on the traffic study that was performed.
Yes.
Thank you. I understand that some updating will need to be done. But when you presented to us the areas which you focused as to this development not having a major impact, as we update the study moving forward, I mean, this would have to include the downtown area as well, right? Because when we bring this many folks down to our gateway, we presume they're not just entering and exiting, Rosewick, but they're also hopefully, right, especially with a senior community, hopefully they're going downtown to shop and to eat and have lunch. That's the whole point of this sort of project, is to bring business into town as well. But that would include the downtown area also, right?
So some traffic would go down to downtown, certainly. I wouldn't say at this exact moment what intersections it would include or wouldn't include. The typical process is when we come in for plan submittal, we would meet with the town. We would lay out a proposed scope of the study, what the intersections would include, what background developments, and the study methodologies. And there might be some back and forth with the town, and then we would confirm the scope of work and move forward. And that's pretty typical process. My initial thoughts would be that it probably would not include the downtown portion. That while some traffic may go down there, I would suspect it would be a smaller portion of the whole. But that's something that will be resolved when we go through the scoping agreement. We can't and we won't force a scope down the town's throat. I mean, the town's going to have to review it and agree to it and feel comfortable with it.
I appreciate that. I think that's helpful. I think just the cumulative effect of multiple developments, we can
Sure.
look at it with a very small scope and say, okay, well, to this immediate area, we're good. But then when you add development B, C, and D, all of a sudden the cumulative effect is larger. So that's something I guess we can work with you guys on in the future. Thanks a lot.
Certainly.
And one of the things that we have to be, we could go through all of the wonderful architect designs you have. We need to tonight realize whether we want to annex it in or not. The one thing that I can say from the previous council as well is you all have never wavered on a design. And that design has been for 10 years. And it is going to be residential somehow. You know, some people get very nervous about not having a concept here. Well, that has changed. You know, we have an idea of what you want here. It's not going to be a bait and switch. What we need to know tonight, what this public hearing is for, and I love the questions that are coming in, is whether or not this piece of property with the NCX zoning is something that we want to bring into the town. So with that, I will, if other council members have questions.
Thank you. Well, I do want to commend you on changing the concept from 55 and older, because when you came before us initially, I thought there were so many coming on, you know, line one on 228, and you thought it was still a good idea, but I'm glad you're rethinking that. And with the traffic study, I think it was conducted under the premise that it was going to be an older residential community, right? So that would definitely need to be rethought if it's going to not be, because it will have more of an impact if it's not an older development. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes, most definitely.
Thank
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins, it's you.
Thank you, Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. Again, thanks a lot for the presentation. Just first a comment. I appreciate the analysis, the specific analysis of looking compatibility with the comp plan, and you went through certain elements. Thank you for that. And could you define, you use a term about stormwater management?
I'm sorry, it was ESD to the MEP.
Could you explain that? I think I know what it is, but it's been a while, so could you?
It's environmental site design to the maximum extent practicable.
And that means?
And that means that we would do stormwater facilities, low impact stormwater facilities, non-structural facilities to the maximum extent that we could on this site to preserve those outlying water resources and have as least the lower amount of impact as we possibly can.
And that's a state requirement.
That is the state
That's a state.
That's in the state
Maryland
stormwater
Department of Environment.
regulations.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you. Couple of questions, please. If in fact the housing types change, I think as Councilwoman Brian Ward alluded to, and if there is a annexation agreement or an annexation plan, would that have to come back and be modified? Just something to think about.
Mr. Manuel?
Because I understand that if the annexation is approved, we're not, it doesn't approve the concept plan. It just says.
Just
Correct,
zoning.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
think,
just the zoning and it's coming in. So I understand that. I certainly understand and appreciate how market changes because it's kind of nuts out there right now. My only concern is that we just want to make sure that the documentation that goes with it are consistent. That's my only question.
if I could, I almost look at this as a sort of a new concept in annexations with these zoning districts in the new zoning ordinance. Because if you look at the TDX and the NCX zones, they really do provide a significant level of design input and collaboration on the part of the town with the owner and the developer. And I think, you know, and the zoning ordinance uses terms like superior design, but I think you do end up with some superior design in establishing these master site development plans. And in talking to the director, and I know she's on, I don't want to speak for her, but I think one of the things that we found with other projects is we want to maintain as much flexibility towards that process as we possibly can in those master site development plans.
And I certainly, I mean, I certainly appreciate that. It just my only pause, and I wouldn't even call it that, is just so we're very transparent to the public and they understand what we're doing and what we get per se. That's all. I think you already answered this question with the sewer issue because I didn't see an appendix C, but now there's another option on the tables.
Another option.
Okay,
we
so
thought
that
was
would-
Better suited.
Okay, so hopefully there'll be some, I'm sure Mr. Stahl has information on your.
Sure, yep. we
Okay.
met with Mr. Stahl.
That's important. And then I noticed on the, as part of our package, there was a letter from the Maryland Department of Planning, and they talked about, La Plata should, I'm quoting here, La Plata should seek a waiver from Charles County prior to annexation if it wants to allow development of the annexed land within the 5 years of land use. Is substantially different than those authorized in the court. So my question is, and we haven't heard from anybody from the public yet, should we keep the record open?
Let's wait until we get to that point.
Well, I'm just putting it out there now then.
Good.
So, thank you.
you.
And that was really of my questions. Thank you.
Great. And I do not have any other questions, so I'm going to ask Craig, has there been any written documents entered into the record?
No one present has signed up to speak, and no one online has asked to speak on the subject, and we have received no written statements via email or mail to the contrary or to the positive.
Okay. Last chance for council to ask any questions.
I'm satisfied.
Okay. So, Mr. Scott, do you have any closing statements, brief closing statements?
I do not, Madam Mayor. I can take a
Okay.
hint, so I'll stop right there.
All right, thank you. Well, so this concludes tonight's hearing, and council will not hear further comments or questions during the meeting. Now, based on the fact there are no written documents and that have been submitted, we did not have anybody speak here or online. I do recommend that we close the record tonight and move forward. Do I have an objection? I heard that you were.
I would prefer just another week to keep the record open in case there are people who want to talk or provide written comments. Because I'm just not really prepared tonight to make a decision.
And that's okay. And you're one vote, and
I know.
we'll see how everyone else does. I'm hearing from everyone. Mr. Councilman Trollinger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, given that it appears to fit with our comprehensive plan, I think this is something that our town will be improved by. I think that somebody investing upwards of $60 million can probably figure out a feasible way to use the land in the confines of what our town requires. I'm for annexation moving forward.
Okay. Councilman Goldsmith.
I'm happy to make a decision tonight.
Okay. And Councilwoman Bryant Ward. Right. So. Okay, so we will close the public hearing and we will close the record tonight. That was exhausting, but good job. That was very thorough, and that's exactly what we needed.
Answering the same question.
Yes. No, that means not yet. And is that right, Mr. Manuel?
That is correct.
Okay, so that is closed and we are done with the public hearing. And that's very good. So we go on. Our agenda is still going. Thank you all very much. All right, next on the agenda is for consideration of adoption, the Villages of Rosewick annexation. If you guys.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, a resolution concerning Villages of Rosewick annexation for the purpose of authorizing the annexation of 20.7256 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata by amending the corporate limits of the town, establishing certain terms, conditions, and circumstances applicable to such land and to the owner thereof, providing for the zoning of such land upon annexation and all matters relating to the annexation of such 20.7256 acres of land, more or less, in the town of La Plata.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion, right? to consider this for adoption. Do I have someone who would like to make a motion to for the Villages of Rosewick annexation?
Yes, Madam Mayor, since this is actually my ward, I would like to make a motion that we accept Resolution 2205 for the annexation of the Villages Rosewick's annexation plan.
Do I have a second? Any discussion from council?
Well, there's another sewer option on the table, so should we get that information before we vote? And what's going to be the disposition of the Maryland Department of Planning letter in terms of that prior to adoption, the waiver? I'm just not clear what that means.
And I think we're looking, well, they do have a viable option for water and sewer that will be at the expense of the developer. So that has been handled. I think that they are trying to find the most economical yet efficient way to do. So I don't think that'll impact the annexation. It may impact how the developer decides to build, but I don't think that will impact the annexation.
I guess I'm just a little uneasy, tonight making a decision when I don't necessarily think I have all the information in terms of the sewer, and frankly, because we still have water issues that need to be resolved, and I would just, again, perhaps we could talk about it later or next week or something. I'm just very uneasy about making a decision tonight, personally. That's me, one person.
All right. Any other comments?
Well, I mean, just so that you put your mind at ease, Director Stahl had given a water allocation, and this was a part of that allocation, even though we are still looking to, have concerns in 2025, but this is 5 years out, and they were already included in the water calculation. Am I correct, Director Stahl? Yeah.
Two things. Just for clarity purposes. The reason for the other sewer option was the fact that previously, and this project dates back a while, there wasn't an option that allowed them to tie into the sewer main, which is now being run by D.R. Horton all the way to the top, to Rosewick Road. They are now running that main all the way down to the Willow Lane pump station, which wasn't even under consideration at the time when this first was considered. So there were different options at that point. The option that came on the table kind of as the fourth option was the fact that D.R. Horton is building that main all the way up to Rosewick Road. And so that was the next option and was probably the best option to be considered at that point because there is a large main. The second thing was, I just want to clarify that we do not have an agreement on water sharing with the county at this point, and that, at some point, barring some sort of, agreement with the county, which is going to come to a head here soon. We do have limited water resources, and we have to, explore other options. And so we have been working on it, but at this point, there is no formal agreement with the county. We're working on a lot of things and trying to get there, but there is no agreement.
And when that comes to a point, the developer understands that they cannot get a permit for a UNO in order to, you come on up.
Put that on the record.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, we understand that issue, and we're obviously taking the risk of moving forward. In terms of the actual need for construction and connection to water, goodness, we certainly hope that that issue is resolved well before that would happen with this project. Otherwise, townwide, we have a problem.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion that has been properly seconded. We had discussion. I'm going to take a vote. All in favor of adopting the Villages of Rosewick annexation 22. Did I hit
Madam Mayor, I wasn't sure that, no. I wasn't sure that the discussion was over. I think Councilman Jenkins raised the question about the water issue. but I don't know that anybody else was able to chime in. And I know it's late, but
Do you have something to add to the discussion?
well, I think he raises the question of waiver, and perhaps Mr. Manuel can weigh in here. I don't think that there's been anything proposed, including option, I guess it's been described as option 4, that would require us to seek a waiver as far as a completely different or substantially different land use. Is that fair, Mr. Manuel? Is that how we should read this? Or what's our risk here?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm following the question. I apologize, Councilman
Sure.
Trollins.
So no problem. I have the benefit of multiple screens looking at it, but Councilman Jenkins cited this April 21st, 2022 letter from the Department of Planning,
Right.
recommending that La Plata seek a waiver prior to annexation if it wants to allow development of the annexed land within the next 5 years for land uses substantially different than those authorized. Use in accordance with applicable county zoning. That is not our situation here as presented, correct?
That's right, I think, but the issue is, and I raised the question too, Mr. Scott, is that they're willing to take that risk.
That's
For 5
correct. And
years. If they might have to wait 5 years, what do you do it?
we understand the 5-year rule in the state ordinance or the state statute. And in fact, a good example is the Mallards Pond annexation we did. After the annexation was granted, we went to the county and they agreed to waive the 5-year rule. I think we have a chicken and egg issue. I've never seen the 5-year rule addressed before in annexation. And I think what we found out with the county when we were there Tuesday is they wanted to know what the town wanted, their words, before they gave us any input on this annexation. So I think it's more appropriate to do this as we have traditionally done, and that is annex first and then consider the land use issue with the 5-year rule.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right.
Yeah, I think they may be addressing the substantial difference in, I guess, county
Yeah.
zone compared to.
That's correct.
That is
Yeah.
correct.
Town
That's what the
zone.
letter says, yeah.
Right.
That's what it refers to.
Yeah, and you know, the way these projects are, as complex as they are, it takes a couple of years even to design them if you can go forward. So I think this is something that we're looking at for the long term for sure.
All right, discussion, good. So we have a motion on the floor and properly seconded. I'm going to take since it seems to be a little bit tough out here, I'm going to take a roll call on this. If you're in favor, please say aye. If not, say nay. Councilman Goldsmith,
Aye.
Councilman Trollinger,
Aye.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward, aye. Councilman Jenkins,
I'm going to say aye, but I would just add a caveat to that, I hope in the future that we have more discussions like this before we vote the same night as we have a public hearing. It just concerns me that there are a lot of, and again, this is not disparaging the application. I think Mr. Scott and the team made a great point about the zoning category, the flexibility of design, working with the staff to work through that process. But given the economy, given the environmental issues, to me, I still believe, and I'm probably going to say it again, I think we should keep the record open despite the fact that nobody was here. And I would just encourage us to have more of this kind of discussion during the annexation process, so we thrash out and learn all the issues. And again, I know we're not adopting the plan per se, it's going to change, but I just, like, this brief discussion to me is very encouraging, and I would urge us to do more of that. So having said all that, I will vote aye.
and Mayor James is aye. Motion carries. The next one up for is 22-06, Villages of Rosewick Annexation Plan Consideration for Adoption. This is
Yes.
number 2.
Madam Mayor, Town Council, Villages of Rosewick annexation for the purpose of authorizing the annexation. Make sure I've got the right one. I apologize. Yes, I do. For the purpose of authorizing the annexation of 20.7256 acres more or less of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata by amending the corporate limits of the town, establishing certain terms, conditions, and circumstances applicable to such land and to the owners thereof, providing for zoning of such land upon annexation and all matters related to the annexation of such 20.7256 acres of land more or less into the town of La Plata.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept resolution 22-06 as presented?
I make a motion, we accept resolution 22-06 as presented.
Do I have a second? I will second it. Any discussion?
I'm confused. What is the difference? Mine is reading as if it's the same.
Janine, what is the difference?
Yeah, I think if I can go back to the actual resolution, what was copy and pasted in the agenda is not consistent with the resolution header. Village of Rosewick's annexation plan for the purpose of approving an annexation plan for the annexation of 20.7256 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata and all matters relating to a plan for annexation of such 20.7256 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata. Good catch.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm not that old.
All right, any discussion?
I would almost consider this to be almost like an infill project to a certain degree, because it's, while it's adjacent to the town, it is adjacent to some existing uses, has sidewalks, people could walk to the shopping center. So I almost look at this as almost like an infill.
Yeah.
And so I think that the zoning category and the opportunity to work through the design issues in a collaborative fashion is very important. I would just want to put that on the record for me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and it's been properly seconded. And is there any, Councilman Challenger, any discussion? Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That was a delayed one. We didn't have to do roll call on this one. All right, brings us to ordinance 22.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Madam Mayor and Town Council, I apologize. This was originally left off the agenda. This is the ordinance that will be establishing our tax rate for FY '23. It was introduced at our business meeting in April, and it's necessary due to the fact that we have to get this rate to the county for tax billing purposes. So with that background, I will introduce an ordinance concerning Town of La Plata fiscal year 2023 tax rate for the purpose of adopting the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2023 tax rate and all matters generally relating thereto.
All right, do I have a motion to accept ordinance 22-06 as presented?
I make a motion, we accept the ordinance 22-06 as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All right, any discussion?
So the tax rate's not going up, essentially, right? Just so.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the future work session topics. But before we do that, do we need to, it's not on the agenda. One of the action items was Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, if you all want to discuss that.
And I don't know, I don't see anybody that goes on that. So Jim has served 1 year, and congratulations, council, this is your 1 year anniversary. So you have survived 1 year, 3 years to go. But traditionally, every year, someone else steps in for a mayor pro tem. Or Jim can stay, and Jim has indicated to me that he had so much fun. And but he wants to share the wealth with somebody else. There you go. And Matt had said that he would like to do it in 23 or 24. So if either one of you would like to do that, I can put you up for nomination. You can rock, paper, scissors, or no goes.
I would, I'm not, I mean, I would defer to Mr. Goldsmith to continue, but that's just me. If he doesn't want to. Well, is it an option or not? I don't know if it is or not.
He just said he didn't want to. She
Oh,
said she wanted.
okay.
No, I just said I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. That was kind of an evil laugh right there.
Well, if it fits, Councilman Prowlinger, and if we go in order, then I will.
Okay, so I would like to put out there, I would like to nominate Councilwoman Bryant Ward to be Mayor Pro Tem out there. Do I have a second?
I definitely second.
All right, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Oh, thank you. We will.
He only had to serve twice.
Yeah,
Once.
that's all right. I'm going on a safari for a month, so we'll make sure you have that. Yeah, I'm just kidding. All right, so we have that, future work session topics.
Yeah. Do the hour, I think you all can read, and if you would have any questions regarding any of those topics, please feel free to reach out now or later.
All right, that brings us to the public forum, if
We're
anybody.
gonna have one on gray water shortly.
Yeah, but as you can see from this list, it's probably going to get kicked.
Yeah, and we
just
do
because
have.
of timing.
And then,
Bobby and I talked about that because Bobby asked the same question. I think it was yesterday afternoon when he was in my office.
and then, is there gonna be any, I guess, status or feedback or the next step for our strategic plan that was adopted or supposedly adopted in
It was not
February?
adopted, so there will be.
Because I think it's important that
Yeah, it
we
was just very compressed with the
Yeah.
timelines trying to get. So we do have a note of that, and we will be bringing that back and sort of looking at the implementation stage.
Great, because I think that's important that we
Mhm.
get into a cycle to do that, not just for this council, but any future councils that we can track it as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the public forum. If anybody would like to speak, either online or in person, please let us know and state your name, your address, and whether you're in the incorporated town limits. Do I have anybody online or in the audience that would like to speak?
Madam Mayor, everyone has left the room.
All right, hearing none, I I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Whew, thank you, guys. Council, just an FYI, make sure that you, if you would like to order any shirts, for, MML, to make sure that you